As we drift back through the mists of time to ancient Greece, let the gentle whispers of history carry you to a world of marble temples gleaming in the Mediterranean sun, of philosophers debating in olive groves, and of city-states rising from the rocky landscapes of the Aegean. Before we begin our journey through this fascinating epoch, I invite you to join our growing community of history enthusiasts who find peace in these nightly explorations. As we settle in for tonight's historical journey, imagine yourself standing atop the Acropolis in Athens, watching the sun set over the ancient world as it has done for thousands of years. The warm breeze carries the distant sounds of waves lapping against the shores of Piraeus, while the scent of cypress and wild thyme drifts through the evening air. This is where our story begins, in the cradle of Western civilization, where the foundations of democracy, philosophy, and artistic expression would slowly take root and flourish. Our tale spans nearly a millennium, from the emergence of the first Greek city-states around 800 BCE to the vast empire of Alexander the Great in the late 4th century BCE. It's a story of gradual transformation, of small settlements growing into powerful polis, of rival cities learning to cooperate and compete, and of a civilization that would leave an indelible mark on human history. In these early days, Greece was not a unified nation, but rather a collection of independent city-states, each with its own unique character and customs. Picture the stark beauty of Sparta, where red-cloaked warriors trained in the shadow of Mount Taygetos, while in Athens, citizens gathered in the Agora to debate matters of state beneath the watchful gaze of the Parthenon. Corinth, with its bustling harbors and merchants counting their drachmas, as the centuries flowed one into another, like water through the channels of time, these city-states developed distinctive forms of government, from the democracy of Athens to the militant aristocracy of Sparta, from the tyrannies of Corinth to the oligarchies of Thebes. Each system emerged gradually, shaped by the landscape, resources, and character of its people. Through the golden age of classical Greece, we'll witness the flowering of art, literature, and philosophy that would influence countless generations to come. We'll hear the words of Socrates echoing through the streets of Athens, see the first Olympic Games bringing together athletes from across the Greek world, and watch as the Parthenon rises, stone by stone, to crown the Acropolis. Then came the tensions, the rivalries, and finally the devastating Peloponnesian War, which would weaken the great city-states and set the stage for the rise of Macedon. From the northern kingdom, Philip II and his son Alexander would emerge to unite the Greek world and create an empire that stretched from the Adriatic Sea to the banks of the Indus River. As we prepare to delve deeper into this rich tapestry of history, let your mind wander through the columned temples and marble monuments, through the bustling agoras and quiet olive groves, through the centuries of achievement and conflict that shaped this remarkable civilization. Let the steady flow of time carry you back to where it all began, in the scattered settlements of ancient Greece, as they first began to form the communities that would change. As the mists of time settled gently over the ancient Mediterranean landscape, we find ourselves drawn to a remarkable period of transformation in Greek history. Between 1000 and 750 BCE, as the warm Mediterranean sun rose and set over the rocky peninsulas and scattered islands, something extraordinary was taking shape: the emergence of the Greek city-states, or polis. Picture yourself walking through this changing landscape, where small settlements gradually grew into more organized communities. The gentle slopes of hills became home to fortified spaces called acropolis, while in the valleys below, people gathered in growing marketplaces called agorae. The soft morning light would illuminate these developing urban centers, where the foundations of Greek civilization. During this period, as olive trees swayed in the coastal breeze, the Greeks began organizing themselves into distinct political communities. Each city-state developed its own unique character, shaped by the surrounding geography and the needs of its people. In fertile valleys, communities focused on agriculture, while those near the sea developed maritime trade, their harbor waters gently lapping against wooden trading vessels. The process was unhurried, like the steady growth of a Mediterranean pine. Small villages, once scattered across the landscape, gradually coalesced into larger settlements. Families and clans, bound together by shared customs and beliefs, began establishing more formal systems of governance. The air would have been filled with the distant sounds of construction, stone upon stone being laid for new temples and public buildings. Among these emerging polis, we can imagine the daily life of the people. Farmers tending their fields in the cool morning hours, craftsmen shaping clay and metal in small workshops, merchants exchanging goods in the growing marketplaces. The rhythm of life was tied to the seasons, as communities celebrated religious festivals and gathered for political assemblies under the open sky. This was also a time of cultural awakening. The Greeks began adapting and developing the Phoenician alphabet, creating their own written language. Poetry and oral traditions flourished, with tales of gods and heroes being shared around evening fires, the storytellers' voices carrying softly through the gathering darkness. Social structures were evolving too, as naturally as water finding its course down a mountainside. The old tribal systems gradually gave way to more complex social organizations. Aristocratic families emerged as leaders, their influence growing like the shadows of their hilltop homes at sunset. Yet even as social hierarchies developed, the seeds of future democratic ideals were being planted. Trade networks expanded across the Mediterranean, carried by ships whose sails caught the same winds that had guided Mycenaean vessels centuries before. These connections brought new ideas and materials to the growing polis, enriching their culture and economy. The sound of foreign languages would have mingled with Greek in the harbors, as merchants from distant shores arrived with exotic goods and stories. As we drift toward 750 BCE, we see these city-states becoming more defined, each with its own customs, laws, and identity. Like stars appearing in the evening sky, centers such as Athens, as the mists of time slowly part, we find ourselves emerging from what historians call the Greek Dark Ages, a period that gradually gave way to new light and possibilities. Picture the gentle awakening of civilization, like the first rays of dawn spreading across the Aegean Sea. Around 800 BCE, communities began stirring from their long period of isolation and simplicity. In these transitional years, imagine walking through a small settlement as it slowly transforms. The simple mud brick homes are giving way to more permanent stone structures. The air carries the rhythmic sounds of metalworking, as craftsmen rediscover the sophisticated bronze working techniques their ancestors once knew. The knowledge of writing, lost for centuries, begins to return as traders bring Phoenician letters to Greek shores, where they would be adapted into the familiar. Listen to the whispered stories passed down through generations, telling of the great Mycenaean civilization that came before. These memories, preserved in oral traditions like Homer's epic poems, served as inspiration for the emerging Greek society. In village gatherings, you might hear the soft voices of elders reciting tales of heroes and gods, keeping alive the cultural threads that would help weave the fabric of classical Greek civilization. The gentle rustling of olive groves marks the spread of agriculture, as communities begin to cultivate the rocky Greek landscape with renewed skill and purpose. The scent of ceramic kilns fills the air as potters experiment with new designs, their vessels telling stories of daily life and mythological scenes in increasingly sophisticated styles. Trading ships return to the harbors, their holds. In the growing settlements, you can sense the stirring of new ideas. The first temples begin to rise, simple structures that would evolve into the magnificent monuments of classical Greece. Communities gather to discuss matters of common concern, planting the seeds of democratic governance that would later flourish in Athens and other city-states. This emergence wasn't sudden or dramatic, but rather like the gradual changing of seasons. Over generations, population centers slowly grew, agricultural techniques improved, and social structures became more complex. Families began to trace their lineages with greater care, leading to the formation of aristocratic houses that would shape Greek politics. Watch as artisans rediscover the art of working with iron, their forges glowing softly in the gathering dusk. The weapons and tools they create are stronger than the bronze ones of old, enabling better farming, construction, and defense. The sounds of their hammers echo through valleys where settlements are growing into the first true city-states. Trade routes, dormant for centuries, slowly reawaken like streams after a long drought. Merchants travel between communities, exchanging not just goods but ideas, stories, and technological knowledge. The Mediterranean world is becoming connected once again, setting the stage for the great cultural flowering that would follow. As we drift through this period of reawakening, we can feel the quiet excitement of possibility in the air. The foundations are being laid for the classical age of Greece, when philosophy, art, and democracy would reach new heights. But for now, in these gentle years of emergence, change comes slowly and steadily, like the patient growth of an olive tree reaching toward the sun. As the Greek world emerged from its dark age, a unique form of social and political organization began to take shape across the landscape. The polis, or city-state system, gradually developed between the 8th and 6th centuries BCE, creating the distinctive pattern of independent communities that would define Greek civilization. Picture the gentle. In these early days, you might have heard the soft footsteps of citizens walking along newly paved streets, as urban centers began to form around their sacred high places. The agora, or central marketplace, became the beating heart of each polis, where the murmur of voices would rise with the morning sun as people gathered to trade, discuss, and participate in the governance of their community. The sound of hammers and chisels. Each polis developed its own unique identity, yet they shared common features that bound them together as distinctly Greek communities. The typical polis centered around its acropolis, with its temples and sacred spaces, while below, the agora served as both marketplace and meeting place. Around these cores, residential areas spread outward, often protected by stone walls that offered security and defined the boundaries. The countryside surrounding each polis, known as the chora, was integral to the community's survival. Here, farmers tended their olive groves and vineyards, the gentle rustle of leaves in the Mediterranean breeze accompanying their daily labor. This agricultural foundation supported the urban population, creating a delicate balance between town and country that characterized the polis system. Political organization varied among the polis, but most evolved from monarchy toward broader forms of governance. In some cities, power rested with aristocratic families, while others developed early forms of democracy or fell under the rule of tyrants. Athens and Sparta emerged as contrasting models, Athens gradually moving toward democracy, while Sparta maintained its unique dual monarchy and military focus. The size of these city-states remained relatively modest, with most having populations between 5,000 and 50,000 citizens. This human scale allowed for direct participation in governance and fostered strong bonds of community. Citizens would gather regularly in assembly places, their voices joining together to debate and decide matters of public importance. The religious festivals and athletic competitions helped forge connections between different polis, even as they maintained their independence. The Olympic Games, first formally organized in 776 BCE, brought citizens from various city-states together every 4 years, creating a peaceful space for competition and cultural exchange. The air would fill with the scent of sacrificial offerings, and the polis system fostered intense loyalty among its citizens, who saw their city-state as the center of their identity. This strong local attachment would later create challenges for attempts at broader unity, yet it also drove competition and innovation that helped Greek civilization flourish. As evening shadows lengthened across temple columns and market squares, citizens would return to their homes, secure in their place within these carefully ordered communities that, as the Greek city-states took shape, intricate social and political structures emerged, weaving together the fabric of daily life in these bustling communities. Let us drift back to these formative times, when the gentle slopes of Mediterranean hills cradled the development of revolutionary new ways of organizing society. In the warm morning light of around 800 BCE, the social structure of most Greek polis centered around three main groups: the aristocrats, known as eupatridae or those of good birth; the common free citizens who worked as farmers and craftsmen; and the lower classes, which included both free non-citizens and slaves. Picture the aristocrats in their fine wool hammadians, gathering in shaded courtyards to discuss matters of state. The family unit, or oikos, formed the foundation of Greek society. Within each household, the kyrios, the male head of the family, held authority over all members, making decisions that would ripple through generations. Women managed domestic affairs, their voices carrying through sun-dappled courtyards as they directed household slaves and supervised the preparation of food and textiles. As evening shadows lengthened across marble steps, political discussions would continue in the earliest forms of government. The basileus, or hereditary chief, gradually gave way to new forms of leadership. In many cities, powerful aristocratic families initially held sway, their influence as natural as the olive trees that dotted the landscape. This system, known as oligarchy, saw power concentrated in the hands of the few, their decisions echoing through columned councils. Listen to the whispered conversations of change, as some city-states experimented with different forms of governance. In Sparta, two hereditary kings shared power, their dual monarchy balanced by the gerousia, a council of elders whose measured voices guided the state. The assembly of citizens, gathering under open skies, would hear proposals and signal their approval or disapproval with collective shouts that rolled across the assembly grounds. Athens developed differently, its political evolution flowing like the gentle current of the Ilissos River. Around 620 BCE, Draco established the first written law code, harsh though it was. Then came Solon in 594 BCE, his reforms like fresh spring rain, bringing relief to indebted citizens and laying the groundwork for broader participation in government. Picture the social bonds within each polis were strengthened through shared religious practices and festivals. In the soft light of dawn, citizens would gather at temples to make offerings to the gods, the smoke from sacrificial fires rising into the clear Mediterranean sky. These communal ceremonies, along with athletic competitions and theatrical performances, trade networks flourished between city-states, creating complex webs of interdependence. Imagine merchant ships sliding into harbor at sunset, their holds full of grain, olive oil, and precious metals, while in the port cities, representatives from different polis negotiated agreements that would bind their communities together in networks of mutual benefit and understanding. As night falls on our journey through these early social and political structures, we can see how they laid the foundation for the classical period to come. These innovations in governance and social organization would echo through the centuries, their influence as enduring as the stone temples that still stand as testament to this remarkable age. As the morning mist gradually lifted from the valleys of ancient Greece, the Archaic period emerged as a time of remarkable transformation and growth. Between 750 and 500 BCE, the scattered settlements that had survived the Dark Ages began to flourish into vibrant centers of culture, commerce, and innovation. Let us drift back to these centuries of awakening, when the foundations of classical Greek civilization were gradually taking shape. In these warming years, the gentle Mediterranean breezes carried the sounds of bustling marketplaces and the steady rhythm of craftsmen's tools across expanding cities. The period witnessed the rise of monumental architecture, as temples of gleaming limestone began to replace their modest wooden predecessors. In places like Corinth and Athens, Artisans developed new techniques for creating ceramics. The written word returned to Greek civilization during this time, though in a new form. The Greeks adapted the Phoenician alphabet, adding vowels to create their own distinctive script. Poetry flourished as never before, with works being recorded rather than simply passed down through oral tradition. The soothing verses of Hesiod's Works and Days and the epic tales of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey were now preserved in writing, their rhythmic lines echoing through the ages. Trade networks expanded across the Mediterranean, like gentle waves connecting distant shores. Greek merchants established colonies from the Black Sea to southern Italy and Sicily, creating a web of interconnected communities. These colonies, such as Cumae in Italy and Cyrene in North Africa, carried Greek culture and customs to new lands while bringing fresh ideas and resources back to the mainland. The quiet transformation of social structures continued throughout this period. A new class of wealthy merchants and craftsmen emerged alongside the traditional aristocracy. In the countryside, farmers began cultivating olive trees and grapevines more extensively, their patient tending of the land producing oils and wines that would become prized throughout the Mediterranean. Political life evolved with similar patience and persistence. The rule of hereditary kings gradually gave way to aristocratic councils, and in some cities, to the first experiments with broader forms of government. In Athens, the reforms of Draco around 621 BCE established written law codes, while Solon's changes in 594 BCE began to extend political rights to more citizens based on wealth rather than birth alone. The arts flourished with unprecedented vigor during these years. Sculptors began to create more naturalistic figures in stone, their chisels carefully revealing the human form within blocks of marble. The black figure pottery technique developed in Corinth spread throughout the Greek world, allowing artists to tell stories through detailed scenes painted on vellum. Religious practices became more organized and elaborate. The first stone temples rose at sacred sites like Delphi and Olympia, their columns reaching skyward as permanent homes for the gods. The Olympic Games, first recorded in 776 BCE, grew into a regular celebration that brought Greeks from all cities together in peaceful competition. As we rest in contemplation of this period, we can imagine the steady pulse of progress that characterized these centuries. Each generation built upon the achievements of those who came before, creating the cultural foundations that would support the golden age to come. The archaic period was like a long dawn, gradually illuminating the landscape of Greek civilization and preparing the way for the brilliant day that would follow in the classical age. As Greek city-states flourished and populations grew during the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, a remarkable period of expansion began to unfold across the Mediterranean. Like gentle waves spreading outward from the Greek mainland, colonies gradually established themselves along distant shores, creating a vast network of interconnected Greek settlements and trading posts. Picture the scene as Greek ships, their wooden hulls creaking softly in the Mediterranean swells, ventured forth from ports like Corinth, Chalcis, and Miletus. These vessels carried not just traders and settlers, but also the seeds of Greek culture, language, and traditions. The aroma of olive oil and wine, stored carefully in clay amphoras, would have filled the holds of these ships as they sought new harbors. The western Mediterranean became dotted with Greek colonies, particularly in southern Italy, which became known as Magna Graecia, Greater Greece. Cities like Cumae, founded around 750 BCE, and Syracuse in Sicily, established by Corinthian settlers in 734 BCE, grew into prosperous centers of trade and culture. The Sound. To the east, Greek settlers established communities along the Black Sea coast, where the climate was cooler and the terrain different from their homeland. Cities like Byzantium, founded by Megarian colonists around 667 BCE, would later become crucial trading posts. Here, Greek merchants exchanged olive oil, wine, and crafted goods for grain, timber, and The process of colonization was typically peaceful and methodical. Before establishing a new settlement, cities would consult the oracle at Delphi, seeking divine guidance for their ventures. The founding of a colony, or a poikia, was a carefully planned affair, with the Okists, colony founder, leading a group of settlers. Trade routes gradually wove themselves across the Mediterranean like invisible threads connecting distant shores. Phoenician traders, long-established masters of maritime commerce, began sharing these routes with Greek merchants. The exchange wasn't merely commercial ideas. Artistic styles and technological innovations traveled along these same paths, enriching both colonial and in the colonial cities. We would have found a fascinating blend of Greek and local influences. The architecture might follow familiar Greek patterns, but local materials and techniques would add unique characteristics. The marketplaces would buzz with multiple languages as traders from different cultures met to exchange goods and stories. This period of expansion brought tremendous wealth to many Greek cities. Corinth, strategically located on the isthmus connecting mainland Greece to the Peloponnese, grew particularly prosperous from colonial trade. The city's distinctive pottery, with its refined black figure technique, became highly sought after throughout the Mediterranean world. The colonies themselves often grew more wealthy and powerful than their mother cities. Syracuse, for instance, developed into one of the largest and most influential cities in the Greek world, its harbor filled with trading vessels and its agora bustling with commercial activity. The gentle sound of waves lapping against stone harbor walls would have provided a constant backdrop to the daily life of these maritime cities. This expansion of trade and settlement created a broader Greek world, one connected by shared language, religion, and culture, yet enriched by regional variations and influences. The networks established during this period would continue to shape Mediterranean history for centuries to come, laying the groundwork for future developments in commerce, culture, and political organization. As the Greek city-states grew in wealth and population during the Archaic period, social tensions began to simmer beneath the surface of their prosperity. The traditional aristocratic families, who had long held power through their control of land and resources, faced increasing pressure from a rising merchant class and frustrated common citizens. In this atmosphere of change, a new form of leadership emerged: the tyrants. Unlike our modern understanding of tyranny, these early Greek tyrants were often popular leaders who gained power through public support rather than pure force. They typically emerged in the late 7th and 6th centuries BCE, promising to address the grievances of common people against the aristocratic elite. In cities across the Greek world, from Corinth to Sicyon, from Megara to Samos, individual leaders rose to challenge the old order. One of the most notable tyrants was Cypselus of Corinth, who came to power around 657 BCE. The son of an aristocratic mother and a common father, he understood both worlds and skillfully managed to overthrow the ruling Bacchiad family. Under his rule, Corinth flourished as a center of trade and craftsmanship. His son Periander continued his father's policy. In Athens, the path to democracy began with increasing social unrest. The poor farmers, burdened by debt and the threat of enslavement, sought relief from their aristocratic creditors. In 594 BCE, the Athenians appointed Solon, a respected poet and statesman, to serve as mediator and lawgiver. With gentle wisdom, he implemented. Picture the streets of ancient Athens, where citizens gathered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones about Solon's reforms. The sweet scent of olive trees mixed with the salty breeze from the nearby sea as people contemplated their new rights and responsibilities. In the agora, merchants and craftsmen conducted their daily business with renewed confidence, knowing they now had a voice in their city's governance. However, even Solon's reforms could not completely resolve Athens' social tensions. In 546 BCE, Pisistratus established himself as tyrant after multiple attempts. Despite his irregular rise to power, His rule brought stability and cultural flourishing to Athens. He supported religious festivals, improved water supply systems, and provided loans to small farmers. The last Athenian tyrant was Hippias, Pisistratus's son, who was eventually expelled in 510 BCE. This led to the reforms of Cleisthenes in 508 BCE, which established what we now recognize as democratic government. Cleisthenes reorganized the citizen body into 10 new tribes, mixing people from different regions and social backgrounds. He introduced the council. As the sun set over the Acropolis, citizens would gather in their local meeting places, participating in discussions about public matters that would have been unthinkable just a generation before. The soft murmur of democratic debate replaced the commanding voice of individual rulers. This new system, though not without its flaws, would become Athens' greatest legacy to the world, inspiring political thinkers and reformers for millennia to come. The rise and fall of tyrants and the gradual development of democratic institutions marked a crucial transition in Greek political life. These changes would set the stage for Athens' golden age and influence the political development of other Greek city-states, as they too sought to balance the interests of various social groups and create more inclusive forms of government. As peace and prosperity grew across the Greek world, a remarkable flowering of culture and artistic achievement began to unfold. The gentle Mediterranean breeze carried the sounds of poetry recitations, theatrical performances, and philosophical discussions through the streets of Athens and other city-states. This cultural renaissance, beginning around 400, in the warm glow of afternoon sun, citizens would gather in the Agora to hear the latest works of poets and dramatists. The great tragedians, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, crafted stories that explored the deepest questions of human existence. Their words echoed through the theater of Dionysus, where up to 17,000 spectators could sit on stone benches, watching masked actors bring mythological tales to life against the backdrop of the visual arts flourished with equal vigor. Sculptors like Myron and Phidias transformed cold marble into figures of such lifelike grace that they seemed to breathe. The Parthenon rose majestically on the Acropolis, its perfectly proportioned columns reaching toward the heavens. Inside, Phidias's massive chryselephantine statue of Athena stood 40 feet tall. Painters adorned pottery with scenes from daily life and mythology, their red and black figures telling stories that would survive millennia. The gentle curves of amphorae and craters became canvases for artists to explore both traditional themes and new artistic innovations. In workshops throughout the city, the soft sound of this was also the golden age of philosophy. In the cool shade of olive groves, Socrates walked with his students, asking questions that would transform human thought. The fragrant air carried the sound of earnest discussions about justice, beauty, and truth. His student Plato would later establish the Academy, where thinkers gathered to explore ideas about government, mathematics, and the nature of reality itself. Architecture reached new heights of sophistication, as builders applied precise mathematical principles to create structures of perfect harmony. The soft golden light of dawn would illuminate temples and public buildings designed according to the golden ratio, their proportions pleasing to both eye and mind. The Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian orders each brought their own character to these magnificent structures. Music and dance were integral to daily life, with the gentle notes of the lyre and aulos accompanying religious ceremonies and social gatherings. The rhythmic movements of dancers told stories of gods and heroes, while choruses performed complex arrangements that blended voice and instrument in sublime harmony. In the realm of science and mathematics, minds like Pythagoras and later Aristotle sought to understand the underlying patterns of the natural world. Their observations and theories, discussed in gardens and courtyards, laid the groundwork for centuries of scientific inquiry. This cultural flowering spread beyond Athens to other city-states and Greek colonies, each adding their own unique contributions to the tapestry of Hellenic civilization. The ideas and artistic achievements of this period would later influence Roman culture, and through it, the development of Western civilization as a whole. As evening shadows lengthened across marble columns and painted walls, the Greeks had created a cultural legacy that would echo through the centuries. Their quest for beauty, truth, and understanding produced works of such profound insight and elegant execution that they continue to move and inspire us, like distant music carried on a warm Mediterranean breeze. As Greek city-states grew and prospered during the Archaic period, a revolutionary form of warfare emerged that would define Greek military culture for centuries to come. The development of hoplite warfare, which took shape gradually between 750 and 650 BCE, transformed not only how Greeks fought their battles, but also how their societies were organized and how they viewed themselves as citizens. Picture, if you will, the hoplite warrior, standing shoulder to shoulder with his fellow citizens in the phalanx formation, his bronze helmet gleaming in the Mediterranean sun, his round hoplon shield overlapping with those of his neighbors, creating an impenetrable wall of bronze and leather. The gentle clinking of bronze armor and the soft rustling of red wool cloaks would have filled the air as these citizen soldiers moved in formation across the heart of this new way of fighting was the phalanx, rows of heavily armed infantry standing close together, typically 8 ranks deep. Each hoplite carried a hoplon shield on his left arm, from which they derived their name, and a long spear called a dory in his right hand. The shield was convex and about 3 feet in diameter, decorated with individual emblems and symbols that identified different city-states. The equipment of a hoplite was not inexpensive, and this created a natural connection between military service and social status. Those who could afford the bronze armor, shield, and weapons formed a new middle class of citizen soldiers. In Athens and other cities, this group became known as the Zeugatai, citizens wealthy enough to own their own armor and contribute to the defense of. Listen to the soft footfalls of these citizen soldiers as they trained together in the gathering places of their cities. The weight of their armor, approximately 70 pounds in total, required strength and endurance built through regular exercise. The bronze breastplate, greaves protecting the shins, and helmet would have felt warm against the skin under the Mediterranean sun. The rise of hoplite warfare brought about significant social changes. The collective nature of phalanx fighting fostered a sense of unity and equality among citizens who fought together. Success depended not on individual heroics, as celebrated in Homer's epics, but on maintaining formation and working in concert with one's fellow soldiers. This military cooperation influenced political development, contributing to the rise of more democratic forms of government in many city-states. Battles between hoplite armies often followed a predictable pattern, taking place on flat, open ground where phalanxes could maneuver effectively. The slow advance would begin with the sound of flutes playing the paean, a hymn to Apollo, setting the pace for the warrior's movement. The clash of bronze against bronze, the pressure of shield against shield, and the coordinated push of the entire. As we drift through these ancient memories, we can sense how this style of warfare shaped Greek society for generations. The hoplite ideal of citizenship, service, and solidarity became deeply embedded in Greek culture. The sound of bronze armor being lovingly maintained, the sight of young men training together in the afternoon sun, and the shared experience of standing shoulder to shoulder in defense of one's city created bonds that extended far beyond the battlefield, weaving together the very fabric of Greek society. As the Greek city-states continued to develop their unique forms of governance and military organization, a significant threat emerged from the East that would test their resolve and ultimately forge a greater sense of Greek unity. Let us turn our attention to the growing Persian Empire and its fateful encounter with the Greek world. In the peaceful evening hours of 500 BCE, The comfortable routines of the Ionian Greek cities along the western coast of Asia Minor were about to be disrupted. These prosperous settlements, with their bustling harbors and marble temples, had fallen under Persian control, and a growing sense of unrest stirred within their walls. The gentle As the revolt unfolded, Athens and Eretria sent ships to support their Ionian kinsmen, an action that would have far-reaching consequences. The wooden vessels, their oars dipping rhythmically into the wine-dark sea, carried both hope and warriors across the Aegean. Though the revolt was ultimately unsuccessful, these actions drew the attention of the Persian king Darius I, who vowed to punish those who had aided the rebellion. The Persian response came gradually but inexorably. In 490 BCE, a substantial Persian force crossed the Aegean, their ships forming a vast flotilla that stretched across the horizon. The morning sun glinted off bronze armor and wooden ships as they approached the Greek mainland. After capturing Eretria, the Persians landed at Marathon, a coastal plain about 26 miles from Athens. The Athenian response demonstrated the effectiveness of their hoplite warfare. Under the leadership of Miltiades, the Athenian army marched out to meet the Persian threat. The morning air was cool and still as the heavily armed hoplites, their shields touching. But this was only the beginning. A decade later, Xerxes, the son of Darius, began preparing an even larger invasion force. The scale of his preparations was unprecedented. Engineers constructed a bridge of boats across the Hellespont, while supply depots were established along the intended route. The sound of hammers and saws filled the air as thousands of vessels were constructed in Persian shipyards. As news of these preparations reached Greece, something remarkable occurred. Despite their long-standing rivalries and differences, many Greek city-states began to unite under Spartan military leadership and Athenian naval guidance. This Hellenic League, though not comprising all Greek cities, represented an extraordinary moment of cooperation in the face of external threat. The Persian invasion of 480 BCE brought both tragedy and triumph. The heroic stand of the Spartan king Leonidas and his men at Thermopylae, though ending in defeat, bought precious time for the Greek allies. The evacuation of Athens, with its citizens taking refuge on the island of Salamis, marked a poignant moment as people left their homes and temples to the approaching Persian army. Yet in the narrow waters around Salamis, the Greek naval forces, led by the Athenian commander Themistocles, achieved a decisive victory. The confined space negated the Persians' numerical advantage, while the more maneuverable Greek triremes proved devastatingly effective. The following year, at Plataea, the Greek alliance won a decisive land victory that finally ended the Persian threat to mainland Greece. Let us drift back to the shores of Ionia, where Greek colonies had long flourished along the western coast of Asia Minor. As the gentle Aegean waves lapped against the harbors of prosperous cities like Miletus and Ephesus, tensions were slowly building beneath the surface of Persian rule. In these twilight years of the 6th century BCE, the Ionian Greeks lived under the oversight of the vast Persian Empire, their cities governed by tyrants who answered to the great king. The seeds of revolt were planted in the fertile soil of discontent, as merchants and citizens in these Greek cities yearned for the autonomy they saw in their mainland counterparts. In 499 BCE, Aristagoras, the ambitious tyrant of Miletus, initiated what would become known as the Ionian Revolt. Like a gentle breeze growing into a powerful wind, the uprising spread from. Picture the bustling port of Miletus, where ships laden with trade goods rocked gently in the harbor as Aristagoras gathered support for his bold venture. He had convinced Athens and Eretria to send aid, their triremes sailing across the wine-dark sea to support their Ionian kinsmen. The sound of hammers and saws filled the air as ships were prepared, while in the Agora, citizens gathered to discuss the momentous events unfolding around them. The revolt initially met with success, like the first warm days of spring bringing promise of change. The allied Greek forces marched inland and managed to capture and burn Sardis, the Persian regional capital, in 498 BCE. Yet this victory would prove as fleeting as morning mist. The Persian response was measured but inexorable, like the steady rise of tide waters against the shore. In the quiet moments before dawn, imagine the anxiety of the Ionian Greeks as they heard reports of Persian forces gathering inland. The great king Darius I dispatched his generals with instructions to quell the rebellion, their armies moving with the deliberate patience of a hunter stalking its prey. Year by year, the Persian forces methodically reduced the revolt. City after city fell back under Persian control, until finally, in 494 BCE, the Persians laid siege to Miletus itself. The once proud city, mother of many colonies and center of philosophical thought, faced its darkest hour. After a long siege, during which the sounds of Persian siege engines became a constant rhythm in the lives of the inhabitants, the aftermath brought profound changes to the Ionian Greek world. The Persians dealt harshly with Miletus, relocating many of its citizens and making an example of the city that had dared to challenge their authority. Yet like seeds scattered by an autumn wind, Ionian culture and learning spread westward as scholars and artists sought new homes in mainland Greece and the western colonies. The Ionian Revolt, though ultimately unsuccessful, had far-reaching consequences that would echo through the decades to come. It marked the beginning of a century of conflict between Greece and Persia, like the first distant rumbles of an approaching storm. The mainland Greek cities, particularly Athens, had revealed themselves as enemies of Persia, and Darius would not forget this slight. In the quiet hours, as we contemplate these events across the centuries, we can almost hear the whispered conversations in Miletus's streets, feel the weight of decision upon Aristagoras's shoulders, and sense the gradual shift of power that would transform the ancient Mediterranean world. In the wake of the Ionian Revolt, the Persian Empire's attention turned westward toward mainland Greece. The year 490 BCE would become etched in history. As Persian King Darius, I launched his first major expedition to punish Athens and Eretria for their support of the Ionian rebels. Let us drift back to those consequential days, when the warm Mediterranean winds carried Persian ships across the Aegean Sea. The Persian force, led by commanders Datis and Artaphernes, moved methodically through the Cyclades Islands, their oars cutting through the crystal waters as they gathered strength and supplies. The fleet, numbering perhaps 600 triremes, carried a substantial army estimated at 25,000 men. In the Greek cities, watchfires would have blazed along the coastline as observers tracked the Persian advance, messengers running between. Eretria fell first, after a 6-day siege. The city's inhabitants could only watch as smoke rose from their burning temples, their fate sealed as they were captured and deported to the distant Persian Empire. The Persian army then crossed to Attica, guided by the exiled tyrant Hippias, who hoped to regain power in Athens. They landed on the wide plain of Marathon, about 26 miles from Athens, where the gentle slopes and open ground seemed perfect for them. In Athens, the atmosphere would have been tense but determined. The Athenian army, led by Callimachus the war archon and 10 strategoi including the experienced Miltiades, marched out to meet the Persian force. The sound of bronze armor and steady footsteps would have echoed through the streets as approximately 10,000 hoplites, joined by about 1,000. For several days, the armies observed each other across the plain, the late summer heat shimmering over their encampments. The Athenians faced a difficult choice: remain at Marathon to prevent the Persians from advancing, or return to defend Athens itself. The debate among the strategoi was finally settled by Miltiades' persuasive arguments for immediate action. On a late summer morning, with the sun rising over the mountains, the Greek forces advanced. Instead of the traditional slow approach, the hoplites broke into a run across the final stretch, their shields and spears gleaming, the sound of their charge building like distant thunder. The unusual tactic caught the Persians by surprise, minimizing their time to launch arrows and limiting their cavalry's effect. The battle itself lasted perhaps 3 hours. The stronger Persian center pushed back against the Greek lines, but the heavily armed hoplites on the wings enveloped the Persian flanks. The sound of bronze striking bronze, the crash of shields, and the cries of men would have filled the air as the Persian line gradually crumbled. The retreat became a rout, with Persian soldiers fleeing back to their ships. The Athenians, having lost only 192 men compared to perhaps 6,400 Persians, quickly marched back to defend their city from a possible Persian naval attack. They arrived in time to see the Persian fleet departing, their victory complete. The messenger Phidippides, who had run to Sparta before the battle seeking aid, became part of the marathon legend, though the famous marathon run from the battlefield to Athens was likely performed by the entire army. This remarkable victory at Marathon proved that the Persians could be defeated, boosting Greek confidence and pride. It marked a crucial moment in the development of Athenian democracy and self-belief, though the Persian threat was far from over. The echoes of Marathon would resound through Greek history, inspiring future generations and shaping the cultural memory of Athens' golden age. As the echoes of Marathon faded into memory, a new Persian threat emerged under Xerxes, son of Darius. In the peaceful stillness of 480 BCE, the largest army ever assembled in the ancient world began its methodical march toward Greece. Picture the endless columns of soldiers from across the vast Persian Empire, their footsteps creating a distant rumble that seemed to make the very earth tremble. Xerxes had spent years preparing for this invasion, gathering supplies, and building a massive pontoon bridge across the Hellespont to transport his forces. Imagine the gentle lapping of waves against the wooden boats that formed this extraordinary bridge, as countless feet crossed between Asia and Europe. The Persian force, numbering perhaps 300,000 fighting men, the Greek city-states, having learned from the previous invasion, began to coordinate their response. In the quiet meeting halls of the Isthmus of Corinth, representatives from various polis gathered to form what became known as the Hellenic League. Among them, Sparta and Athens set aside their traditional rivalry to face this common threat, their cooperation like a delicate thread binding. As summer warmth settled over the land, the Greeks chose their first defensive position at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, where mountains met the sea in a natural corridor barely wide enough for a wagon to pass. Here, King Leonidas of Sparta led a small force of approximately 7,000 Greeks, including his personal guard of 300 Spartan warriors. They were picture the calm before the storm, as Greek soldiers maintained their position in the shadow of the cliffs. The air would have been filled with the scent of wild herbs growing on the mountainside, mixed with the salty breeze from the nearby sea. For several days, the Greeks successfully held their position, their bronze shields and spears gleaming in the summer sun as they repelled wave after wave of Persian attacks. The turning point came quietly, when a local shepherd named Ephialtes revealed to the Persians a mountain path that would allow them to outflank the Greek position. As dawn broke on the final day, Leonidas, learning of this development, dismissed most of his allies, choosing to remain with his 300 Spartans, along with some Thespians and Thebans who refused to leave. In the growing light of that fateful morning, these remaining defenders faced the Persian army from both front and rear. Their last stand, though ending in their defeat, would become legendary, a testament to Greek determination and sacrifice. The sound of clashing bronze, the steady rhythm of shields meeting in formation, and the quiet dedication of warriors facing overwhelming odds would echo through. Though Thermopylae fell, this delay proved crucial, allowing the Greek fleet to retreat in good order and giving the southern cities time to prepare their defenses. The sacrifice at Thermopylae also served to inspire the Greek resistance, showing that even the mighty Persian Empire could be challenged. As Xerxes' forces moved south toward Athens, the seeds of ultimate Greek victory had been planted in the narrow pass where a small force had stood. After the dramatic events at Thermopylae, the tide of the Persian invasion gradually began to turn. As autumn approached in 480 BCE, the Greek naval forces gathered in the narrow Strait of Salamis, where the confined waters would neutralize the Persians' numerical advantage. The gentle waves lapped against the wooden hulls of hundreds of triremes as Greek and, under the skillful leadership of Themistocles, the Greek fleet of around 380 ships drew the larger Persian fleet into the narrow strait. The morning mists cleared to reveal the chaos that would unfold, as the more maneuverable Greek ships outmatched their Persian counterparts in the confined space. The sound of splintering wood and the calls of sailors echoed across the water as ship after ship met its fate in the strategic trap. The decisive victory at Salamis forced Xerxes to retreat to Asia with much of his fleet, though he left behind a substantial land force under his general Mardonius. Through the winter months, as olive groves stood silent under occasional snowfall, the remaining Persian army waited in Thessaly while the Greeks prepared for the final confrontation. In the summer of 479 BCE, near the small town of Plataea, the largest Greek army ever assembled, nearly 40,000 hoplites, met the Persian forces under Mardonius. The air was thick with the scent of wild thyme, and the morning dew as the armies faced each other across the aftermath of these victories brought profound changes to the Greek world. Athens, whose citizens had returned to find their city burned by the Persians, began to rebuild with renewed confidence and ambition. The sweet smell of fresh-cut pine and cedar filled the air as workers reconstructed homes and temples. The Delian League, formed in 478 BCE under Athenian leadership, as the years passed quietly, like olive leaves rustling in the Mediterranean breeze, Athens gradually transformed the Delian League into what historians would later call the Athenian Empire. The treasury of the League was moved from Delos to Athens, and the tribute paid by member states funded an ambitious building program, including the magnificent structures of the Acropolis that would come to symbolize Athenian glory. The period following the Persian Wars saw Athens enter its golden age. The soft afternoon light illuminated philosophers discussing new ideas in the agora, while the sounds of hammers and chisels echoed from construction sites across the city. Under the leadership of Pericles, Athens flourished as a center of culture, art, and learning. The theater festivals grew more elaborate, with playwrights like Aeschylus. Yet even as Athens reached new heights of prosperity and cultural achievement, tensions grew between the city-states. The Spartans watched with increasing concern as Athens' power and influence expanded. Like storm clouds gathering on the horizon, the seeds of future conflict were being sown in the very moment of Greece's greatest triumph over foreign invasion. After emerging victorious from the Persian Wars, Athens entered a remarkable period of peace, prosperity, and cultural achievement known as its Golden Age. Let us drift back to this transformative time, when the gentle Mediterranean breezes carried the sounds of construction, philosophical discourse, and theatrical performances through the streets of ancient Athens. Under the wise leadership of Pericles, who guided the city's affairs from 461 to 429 BCE, Athens flourished as never before. The marble columns of new temples rose gracefully toward the azure sky, their pristine white surfaces gleaming in the warm sunlight. The most magnificent of these projects was the Parthenon, dedicated to the city's patron goddess Athena. Imagine the steady rhythm of craftsmanship. The agora, Athens' central marketplace and gathering space, buzzed with activity from dawn to dusk. Merchants arranged their colorful displays of fruits, vegetables, and crafts, while the sweet scent of fresh bread mingled with the salty air from the nearby port of Piraeus. In the surrounding stoas, or covered walkways, philosophers like Socrates engaged in thoughtful discussions with their students, their measured voices adding to the peace. This was also a time when democracy reached its fullest expression. Citizens gathered regularly on the Phoenix Hill for assembly meetings, where important decisions were made through open debate and voting. The soft rustling of olive trees in the breeze accompanied their deliberations, as speakers took turns at the stone bema to address their fellow Athenians. Theater flourished during this golden period, with the works of great playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides being performed in the theater of Dionysus. Picture the audiences seated on the stone benches carved into the hillside, watching in rapt attention as actors in masks brought mythological stories to life against the backdrop of the setting sun. The arts and sciences advanced significantly during this time. Sculptors like Phidias created works of such lifelike beauty that they would influence artists for centuries to come. Historians like Herodotus wrote detailed accounts of past events, while physicians like Hippocrates developed new approaches to healing and medical ethics. Women, though not citizens, maintained households and participated in religious festivals. The gentle sounds of looms could be heard from many homes as they wove the fine textiles for which Athens was renowned. Children played in courtyards and attended schools, where they learned poetry, music, and athletics. Athens' power and influence extended across the Aegean Sea through the Delian League, which gradually transformed into an empire under Athenian leadership. The city's fleet of triremes helped maintain peace and protect trade routes, their oars creating rhythmic ripples in the crystal-clear waters. This golden age brought unprecedented wealth and cultural achievements, but it also carried the seeds of future conflicts. Other Greek city-states, particularly Sparta, grew increasingly wary of Athens' power and influence. Yet for these few decades, Athens shone as a beacon of human achievement, creating enduring works of art, architecture, literature, and philosophy that would inspire countless generations to come. As the sun set each evening over the Acropolis, casting long shadows across the city's marble monuments, few could have imagined that this remarkable period would eventually draw to a close, giving way to new chapters in the story of ancient Greece. In the calm waters of the Aegean Sea, as the morning mists cleared from the sacred island of Delos, representatives from various Greek city-states gathered in 478 BCE to form what would become known as the Delian League. The gentle waves lapped against the shores of this holy place, chosen for its significance as the mythical birthplace of Apollo and Artemis. As delegates from across the Greek world came together under Athens, the formation of this alliance emerged naturally from the aftermath of the Persian Wars, as Greek cities sought protection and unity in the face of potential future threats. The marble temples of Delos provided a fitting backdrop, as representatives from dozens of city-states pledged their commitment to this new confederation. The Athenian statesman Aristides, each member state would contribute either ships or money phoros to the common cause. The treasury was established in the Temple of Apollo on Delos, where the sound of coins being counted and recorded echoed through the sacred chambers. Smaller cities often chose to contribute money rather than ships, while larger maritime powers provided triremes and crews. The annual contribution was set at 460 talents. The structure of the league was carefully considered, with each member having a vote in the Synedrion, or Congress, that met regularly on Delos. The delegates would gather in the shade of ancient olive trees, their voices carrying across the assembly ground as they discussed strategy and policy. Athens, with its powerful navy and experienced leadership, naturally assumed the role of hegemon, or leader, though initially as first among equals rather than an imperial power. The primary objective of the Delian League was to continue the fight against Persia, protecting Greek cities in Asia Minor and the islands from potential aggression. Under the leadership of Cimon, son of Miltiades, the League's forces successfully liberated several Greek cities from Persian control. The sound of oars cutting through water and the sight of hundreds of triremes moving in formation became common in the eastern Mediterranean. As the years passed, like the steady flow of tides, the nature of the League gradually transformed. The alliance that had begun as a voluntary confederation slowly evolved into what some historians would later call the Athenian Empire. Many smaller cities, finding the annual contributions burdensome, attempted to withdraw from the League, but Athens increasingly. The treasury itself was moved from Delos to Athens in 454 BCE, officially for security reasons but symbolically representing a significant shift in the League's character. The Parthenon, rising majestically on the Acropolis, was partially funded by League contributions, its marble columns gleaming in the Mediterranean sun as a testament to Athens' growing power and influence. The story of the Delian League is one of transformation, from a voluntary alliance born of necessity and common purpose to an instrument of Athenian power. The League's resources and military might would eventually become crucial factors in the growing tensions between Athens and Sparta, setting the stage for future conflicts that would reshape the Greek world. As evening shadows lengthened across the Aegean, the legacy of this remarkable. As Athens flourished in the wake of the Persian Wars, a remarkable leader emerged who would come to define an era of unprecedented democracy. Pericles, born into a noble family around 495 BCE, rose to prominence in Athenian politics through his exceptional oratory skills and strategic vision. Under his guidance, Athens would experience what historians later called the Age of Pericles, a period of profound democratic reform and cultural achievement. Picture the bustling ecclesia, the assembly of citizens gathering on the rocky slope of the Phoenix Hill, their voices carrying across the warm Mediterranean air as they debated matters of state. Here, Pericles introduced reforms that would strengthen democratic participation, including payment for public service. This revolutionary measure meant that even common citizens could afford to take time away from their daily. The democratic system under Pericles operated through carefully balanced institutions. The Council of 500, selected by lot, prepared legislation for the assembly to consider. In the law courts, ordinary citizens served as jurors, their sandaled feet shuffling across marble floors as they listened to cases and rendered verdicts. Walking through Athens during this period, one would have witnessed democracy in action at every corner. The agora hummed with political discussions as citizens gathered in the shade of stone colonnades. The sweet scent of olive oil from the merchants' stalls mingled with the aroma of roasting meat from nearby food vendors, while philosophers and politicians engaged in passionate debates about justice, equality, and the nature of good governance. Pericles himself lived modestly, despite his position of influence. He was known to walk the same dusty streets as ordinary citizens, stopping to engage in conversations about matters of state. His companion, the brilliant Aspasia, hosted intellectual gatherings where ideas about democracy and philosophy flowed as freely as the wine in their cups. The Periclean system wasn't without its critics. Some aristocrats grumbled about the extension of power to common citizens, their complaints echoing through the marble halls of their private homes. Yet the system proved remarkably stable, allowing for the peaceful resolution of conflicts through established democratic procedures rather than violence. Under this democratic framework, Athens experienced unprecedented cultural achievements. The theater festivals, funded by wealthy citizens as part of their civic duty, drew thousands to watch tragedies and comedies that often explored themes of democracy and justice. The gentle evening breeze carried the voices of actors, and the collective gasps and applause. The democratic ideals of this period extended beyond politics into architecture and art. The Parthenon, rising majestically on the Acropolis, was built not just by master craftsmen, but also by citizens who voted on its design and funding. Its gleaming marble columns stood as a testament to what a democratic society could achieve as the sun set over Athens each evening, casting long shadows across the agora. Citizens would return home knowing they had participated in something extraordinary, a system of government that, despite its limitations and exclusions, represented a remarkable experiment in popular rule. The democratic principles established during this period would echo through the centuries, inspiring future generations to contemplate the meaning of citizenship. Let us drift peacefully through the magnificent cultural and architectural achievements that flourished during this transformative period of ancient Greek history. As Athens grew in power and prosperity under Pericles' leadership, the city became a beacon of artistic and architectural innovation that would influence civilizations for millennia to come. Picture yourself walking through the ancient Acropolis, where the gleaming Parthenon rose majestically between 447 and 432 BCE. This remarkable temple, dedicated to Athena, embodied the perfect harmony of Doric architecture with its precisely calculated proportions and subtle optical refinements. The master architects Ectinus and Callicrates worked alongside the sculptor Phidias. In the gentle evening light, imagine the rich colors that once adorned the temple's sculptures and frieze deep blues, bright reds, and brilliant golds, now faded to the familiar white marble we know today. The metopes depicted scenes from Greek mythology, while the continuous frieze wrapped around the inner chamber showed the Panathenaic procession. Beyond the Parthenon, the Acropolis hosted other architectural marvels. The Propylaea, the monumental gateway, welcomed visitors through its impressive columns. The small temple of Athena Nike graced the southwestern corner, while the Erechtheion, with its famous caryatid porch, stood as a testament to Ionic architectural refinement. In the realm of sculpture, this period witnessed the transition from the rigid archaic style to the naturalistic classical style. Artists like Myron, creator of the Discobolus, captured the human form in dynamic motion. Polykleitos developed his canon of ideal proportions, demonstrating these principles in his Doropharo, or spear-bearer. The sculptures seemed to breathe with life, their faces showing subtle emotions, their bodies suggesting movement frozen in time. Theater flourished during this golden age, with the great tragedians Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides crafting works that still move audiences today. In the theater of Dionysus, carved into the southern slope of the Acropolis, citizens gathered to witness performances of Oedipus Rex, Medea, and the Orsteia. The comic playwright Aristophanes provided sharp social commentary through his witty productions. The development of Greek pottery reached its artistic peak, with red figure vases displaying scenes of daily life, mythological tales, and historical events with extraordinary skill and detail. Master painters like the Berlin painter and the Achilles painter created works that served both practical and artistic purposes, their vessels carrying both wine and visual stories. In the realm of literature, poetry continued to evolve beyond the epic tradition of Homer. Lyric poets like Pindar composed odes celebrating athletic victories and civic virtues, while philosophers such as Anaxagoras and Socrates challenged traditional ways of thinking, laying the groundwork for Western philosophical tradition. This cultural flowering was supported by a strong tradition of craftsmanship and technical innovation. Architects developed sophisticated engineering solutions, metalworkers created delicate jewelry and practical tools, and artisans of all kinds contributed to the rich tapestry of Greek material culture. Their achievements were not confined to Athens alone, but spread throughout the Greek world. As Athens flourished culturally under Pericles, its power as an empire steadily grew across the Aegean Sea and beyond. The transformation from leader of the Delian League to imperial power happened gradually, like waves slowly reshaping the shoreline. In the warm Mediterranean sunshine, Athenian, by the 450s BCE, the treasury of the Delian League had been moved from the sacred island of Delos to the Acropolis in Athens. This symbolic transfer reflected a deeper change. Athens was no longer simply a leading city-state among equals, but rather the center of an expanding empire. The marble buildings in the agora and ports, one could hear merchants speaking various Greek dialects and foreign tongues, as trade flourished under Athenian naval protection. The empire brought wealth flowing into the city like wine into a ceremonial bowl. Customs duties, harbor fees, and tribute payments filled Athens' coffers. This prosperity touched many aspects of daily life, from the olive oil and grain that filled storage amphoras to the fine pottery that graced symposium tables. The empire grew to encompass approximately 150 to 200 city-states, stretching from the Black Sea to parts of modern-day Turkey, the Aegean Islands, and portions of mainland Greece. In these subject territories, Athenian officials called episkopos would oversee local affairs, while Athenian settlers established clerici colonies, their sandaled feet walking new streets in distant lands while maintaining their Athenian citizenship. Yet the empire's expansion was not without resistance. Like a gentle breeze gradually building to a storm, tensions grew as Athens tightened its grip. When the island of Naxos attempted to leave the alliance around 469 BCE, Athenian triremes appeared in their harbor, their oars cutting through the water in unison as they brought military force to bear. Naxos was not the last Thassos, Aegina, and other states would feel the weight of Athene. In the assembly, voices like Pericles argued that the empire brought security and prosperity to all Greeks, while others worried about the moral costs of dominating former allies. The sound of sandals on marble echoed through the Pnyx as citizens debated imperial policy, their words carrying on the warm breeze across the hillside gathering place. The empire reached its greatest territorial extent in the 440s BCE, when Athenian influence stretched like a vast net across the eastern Mediterranean. Ships laden with grain from the Black Sea, timber from Macedonia, and luxury goods from distant shores sailed into Piraeus harbor. Their crews, this was the apex of Athenian power, though storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. The empire's strength would soon be tested by growing tensions with Sparta and its allies, leading toward a conflict that would reshape the Greek world. But for now, in these decades of imperial glory, Athens stood as the greatest power in the Aegean. Its influence, as tensions continued to build between Athens and Sparta, the inevitable conflict that would reshape the Greek world drew near. The Peloponnesian War began in 431 BCE, ushering in nearly 3 decades of warfare that would test the resolve and resources of both great powers. Let us drift back to those fateful days, when the summer air hung heavy with anticipation. The initial spark came from a dispute between Corinth and Corcyra, with Athens choosing to support Corcyra, thereby angering Sparta's allies. Like ripples spreading across a calm pond, the conflict expanded as more city-states were drawn into the growing confrontation. Sparta, leading its Peloponnesian League, represented the traditional land-based power, while Athens commanded its maritime empire. Pericles, still guiding Athenian strategy, adopted what became known as the defensive strategy. He encouraged rural inhabitants to seek shelter behind Athens' mighty walls, while the powerful navy maintained control of the seas and supply routes. Picture the crowded streets of Athens, as farmers and their families sought refuge within the city. The early years of the war followed a predictable pattern, like the changing of seasons. Each spring, Spartan forces would march into Attica, burning crops and destroying farmland, while the Athenians remained protected behind their walls. The Athenian navy, meanwhile, conducted raids along the Peloponnesian coast, striking at vulnerable targets and maintaining vital trade routes. However, fate would deal Athens a cruel blow. In 430 BCE, a devastating plague swept through the crowded city, claiming countless lives, including that of Pericles himself. The loss of such wise leadership would be deeply felt in the years to come. The sounds of mourning mingled with the everyday bustle of city life, as Athens struggled to maintain its resolve. The war entered a period of relative calm after the Peace of Nishes in 421 BCE, though this proved to be merely a pause in the conflict, like the quiet before a storm. The ambitious general Alcibiades soon emerged as a prominent figure in Athens, advocating for a bold expedition to Sicily in 415 BCE. The final phase of the war saw Sparta, now supported by Persian gold, building its own fleet to challenge Athenian naval supremacy. The once mighty Athens began to show signs of strain, like a great oak beginning to bend under relentless winds. The decisive moment came in 405 BCE at Aegispotami, where the Spartan commander Lysander caught the Athenian fleet unprepared, destroying their remaining navy. By 404 BCE, Athens, starved into submission, was forced to accept harsh terms of surrender. The long walls connecting Athens to its port of Piraeus were torn down, its empire dissolved, and its democratic government temporarily replaced by the 30 tyrants, oligarchs supported by Sparta. The sound of stones being dismantled from the proud walls echoed the end of an era. The aftermath of the Peloponnesian War would reshape the Greek world, though not in ways that anyone might have expected. Sparta's victory would prove hollow, as the following decades would bring new challenges and changes to the Greek world, setting the stage for the rise of new powers and the eventual emergence of Macedon under Philip II and his son Alexander. As the echoes of the Peloponnesian War faded across the Greek world, new alliances and power structures emerged from the aftermath of Athens' defeat. Let us drift peacefully through this period of shifting allegiances and complex diplomatic relationships that shaped the destiny of ancient Greece. In the soft morning light of 404 BCE, with Athens' mighty walls now fallen, Sparta stood as the undisputed leader of the Greek world. Yet this dominance would prove as delicate as morning dew, as various city-states began forming new connections and partnerships. The gentle whispers of diplomacy filled marble halls and council chambers across Greece. The Corinthian War of 395 BCE emerged like a gathering storm, when Thebes, Athens, Corinth and Argos formed an alliance against Spartan supremacy. Their combined forces, supported by Persian gold that flowed like water through the Greek world, challenged Sparta's authority. The sounds of sandaled feet marching and bronze armor clinking in the cool shade of olive groves, diplomatic meetings took place as representatives from various polis discussed terms and conditions. The formation of these alliances often centered around shared interest protection from common enemies, control of trade routes, or access to valuable resources. The scent of incense burned at temples while oaths were sworn, binding city-states together in common cause. The Second Athenian League, established in 378 BCE, represented a more gentle approach to alliance building than its predecessor. Athens, having learned from past mistakes, created a confederacy that promised greater autonomy to its members. The warm Mediterranean breeze carried the words of equality and mutual respect across the Aegean, as over 70 city-states gradually joined this new association. Meanwhile, in the northern regions, where cool mountain air swept down from Macedonia, King Philip II was carefully observing these shifting alliances. He understood how the complex web of Greek relationships could be used to his advantage. The soft rustle of papyrus could be heard in his palace as reports arrived detailing the latest diplomatic developments among the southern Greeks. The Sacred Wars, particularly the Third Sacred War, 356–346 BCE, provided opportunities for new alliances to form and old ones to dissolve like morning mist. The conflict, ostensibly about the protection of Apollo's shrine at Delphi, became a catalyst for Philip's increasing involvement in southern Greek affairs. The sweet smell of temple offerings mingled with the tension of political maneuvering. As Philip's influence grew, like a slowly rising tide, he masterfully played different Greek cities against each other. Some cities sought his protection, while others formed defensive alliances to resist him. The sound of heated debates echoed through assembly halls as citizens argued over which path their city should take. The culmination of these shifting alliances came at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BCE, where Philip's military might, combined with careful diplomatic groundwork, allowed him to establish Macedonian hegemony over Greece. The League of Corinth, formed in the aftermath, created a new kind of alliance, one that united most Greek cities under Macedonian leadership, while still preserving some of these complex webs of alliances, and their causes would later prove crucial for Alexander the Great, who inherited not just his father's kingdom, but also the diplomatic frameworks that would help him launch his extraordinary campaign into Asia. The patient work of building relationships and understanding the motivations of different cities would echo through the centuries, influencing how future leaders approached the delicate art of alliance building. As tensions mounted between Greek city-states, military innovation and strategic thinking evolved in fascinating ways. Let us explore some of the key battles and strategies that shaped this transformative period, allowing their steady rhythm to carry us through this chapter of history. The Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE demonstrated the effectiveness of the Greek phalanx formation, where heavily armed hoplite soldiers moved as one coordinated unit, their bronze shields overlapping like scales on a serpent. Picture the morning mist lifting over the plain of Marathon as 10,000 Athenians faced a much larger Persian force. The sound of bronze armor shifting and sandaled feet moving in unison filled the air as the Greeks. The Spartan defense at Thermopylae in 480 BCE, though ultimately unsuccessful, showcased the importance of terrain in ancient warfare. The narrow coastal pass allowed the smaller Greek force to negate the Persian advantage in numbers. Imagine the cool shadow of the cliffs above, the crash of waves against rocks, and the disciplined breathing of Spartan warriors as they held their position day after day. Naval warfare reached new heights of sophistication during the Peloponnesian War. The Athenian trireme ships, powered by three banks of rowers working in perfect harmony, could achieve remarkable speed and maneuverability. The Battle of Navarino Bay in 425 BCE saw Athenian ships executing the innovative tactic of the deeplis, threading through enemy lines to break their formation. The rhythmic splash of hundreds of oars. Theban military innovations brought significant changes to traditional phalanx warfare. At the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BCE, the brilliant general Epaminondas introduced the concept of refusing one wing while concentrating forces on another. Picture the unusually deep Theban left wing, 50 ranks deep instead of the usual 8 to 12, advancing like a massive wedge through the Spartan lines. The rise of Macedonia brought new dimensions to Greek warfare. Philip II introduced the longer sarissa spear and created the formidable Macedonian phalanx. His son Alexander would later perfect these tactics, combining heavy infantry with mobile cavalry in unprecedented ways. The Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC. Siege warfare also evolved significantly during this period. The Siege of Plataea from 429–427 BCE saw the development of sophisticated circumvallation walls and innovative assault techniques. Engineers developed new machines like the Helepolis, massive mobile siege towers that could be rolled up to city walls. The strategies of supply and logistics grew increasingly complex as armies grew larger and campaigns extended further from home. Commanders had to carefully consider the availability of water, the harvest seasons, and the loyalty of local populations. The gentle rhythm of supply trains moving along dusty roads became as crucial to victory as the thunder of cavalry charges. Through all these developments, the human element remained central. Soldiers still gathered around evening fires, sharing meals and stories, maintaining their equipment, and finding moments of peace amid the uncertainty of war. The steady routine of training, the weight of bronze armor, and the bonds between warriors remained constants through centuries of military evolution. As the Peloponnesian War continued to reshape the Greek world, an unexpected and devastating force emerged that would leave an indelible mark on ancient society. In the summer of 430 BCE, a mysterious and deadly plague swept through Athens, entering through the bustling port of Piraeus and spreading rapidly through the crowded city streets. The ancient historian Thucydides, who survived the plague himself, left us a detailed and haunting account of its effects. He described how people initially experienced severe headaches, followed by inflammation of the eyes, while their throats and tongues became bloody. The illness progressed through fever, sneezing, and painful coughing, eventually affecting the stomach and causing intense discomfort. Many victims experienced an unquenchable thirst, and their skin became covered in small. Within the confined space of Athens' walls, where citizens had gathered for protection during the war, the disease spread inexorably. The overcrowded conditions, combined with the summer heat, created perfect conditions for the plague to flourish. The sounds of coughing and labored breathing filled the air, while the scent of burning funeral pyres became a constant presence as the city struggled to manage the mounting deaths. The social fabric of Athens began to unravel as the plague continued its relentless advance. Traditional funeral rites, so central to Greek religious and social life, were abandoned as the number of dead overwhelmed the city's capacity to properly honor them. Bodies were sometimes left where they fell, or hastily thrown onto funeral pyres with little ceremony. Perhaps most significantly, the plague claimed the life of Pericles, Athens' great leader, in 429 BCE. His death marked a crucial turning point, depriving the city of his steady guidance just when it was most needed. The loss of such a prominent figure, combined with the deaths of many other capable leaders and citizens, created a leadership vacuum that would have the plague's impact extended far beyond the immediate death toll. Those who survived often experienced lasting effects, including memory loss and damage to their extremities. The social order was profoundly affected as traditional moral constraints loosened. Thucydides described how people began to spend and live more freely, believing they might not live to see another day. It's estimated that the plague claimed the lives of nearly one-third of Athens' population over several years. The demographic impact was severe, affecting not only the city's military capabilities, but also its economic and cultural life. The loss of skilled artisans, experienced political leaders, and cultural practitioners created. The plague's influence on Greek medicine was also significant. Physicians, including followers of Hippocrates, struggled to understand and treat the disease, leading to new observations about the nature of illness and contagion. Their detailed recordings of symptoms and outcomes contributed to the development of medical knowledge, though the exact nature of the ancient plague remains debated by modern historians and medical. As the plague gradually subsided, its effects continued to ripple through Greek society. The experience of such widespread death and social disruption left an indelible mark on Greek literature, art, and philosophy. The questioning of traditional religious beliefs and social structures that emerged during this period. As the long years of conflict drew to a close, the once mighty Athens found itself surrounded, exhausted, and facing an impossible choice. In 404 BCE, after 27 years of warfare, the Spartan general Lysander sailed into the Piraeus harbor, while the sounds of hammers and chisels echoed across the city as the long walls connecting Athens to its port were systematically dismantled. The proud democracy that had shaped Greek culture. The consequences of Sparta's victory rippled gently across the Greek world like waves on a calm sea. In Athens, the democratic system that had flourished for generations gave way to the rule of the 30 tyrants, a group of pro-Spartan oligarchs who governed with unprecedented harshness. The streets that had once bustled with philosophical discourse and artistic expression grew quieter as citizens walked carefully, speaking in hushed tones. Sparta's triumph brought significant changes to the broader Greek world. The Peloponnesian League, now at its height, extended Spartan influence across territories that had once looked to Athens for leadership. The soft footsteps of Spartan governors could be heard in cities throughout Greece, where they installed friendly oligarchies called decarchies. The evening air carried the sounds of military drills as cities adapted to Spartan customs and expectations. Yet victory brought its own challenges to Sparta. The austere society that had focused solely on military excellence now found itself responsible for managing an empire. The simple lifestyle that had been a hallmark of Spartan culture began to change as wealth flowed into the city. The traditional mess halls where Spartans had shared their simple black broth now occasionally featured luxuries from across the Mediterranean. In the years following their victory, Spartan hegemony faced mounting challenges. The Persian Empire, watching from across the Aegean, began providing support to those who wished to challenge Spartan dominance. The gentle whispers of discontent grew louder as former allies began to question. The consequences of victory transformed Spartan society in unexpected ways. The influx of wealth created divisions among the Spartiates, the elite warrior class. The number of full citizens gradually declined as some could no longer maintain. Meanwhile, Athens slowly recovered from its defeat. Though the democracy was restored in 403 BCE, the city would never regain its former glory. The marketplace still hummed with activity, but the grand building projects of the previous century were now memories. The scent of olive oil and incense still wafted through the temples, but the golden age of Athenian culture. As the 4th century BCE progressed, the Greek world entered a period of shifting alliances and changing power dynamics. The sound of marching feet and clashing weapons would soon be heard again as other cities, particularly Thebes, began to challenge Spartan supremacy. The victory that had seemed so complete in 404 BCE, gradually, the consequences of Sparta's victory would continue to shape Greek society until new powers emerged to challenge the established order. The gentle breeze that carried the scent of victory would soon bring different changes. As the dust settled after Sparta's triumph in the Peloponnesian War, Greece entered a period of profound upheaval and transformation. The gentle waves of the Aegean continued their eternal rhythm against the shores, but the political landscape was far from peaceful. In the soft morning light of 404 BCE, Athens awakened to a new reality. The morning market still bustled with traders selling olives and fresh fish, but conversations turned frequently to politics and power. Throughout the Greek world, city-states that had long existed in a delicate balance now found themselves adrift in uncertain waters. Sparta's dominance, which had seemed so assured in the aftermath of victory, began to show signs of strain. The whispers of discontent grew louder as the Spartans attempted to. In the quiet countryside, farmers continued tending their vines and olive groves, while in the agoras of cities across Greece, philosophers and politicians debated the nature of power and justice. The early years of the 4th century brought a series of conflicts that rippled across the Greek world like gentle waves disturbing still waters. The Corinthian War, beginning in 395 BCE, saw an unlikely alliance form against Sparta, including former rivals Athens, Thebes, Corinth, and even Persia. As golden sunlight filtered through temple columns, the sound of sandaled feet on marble steps marked the comings and goings of ambassadors and messengers. The Peace of Alceip in 387 BCE brought a temporary calm, but like the misleading stillness before a storm, it masked deeper tensions. The Persian influence grew stronger, their gold flowing like honey through Greek cities. In Thebes, where the air was sweet with the scent of summer flowers, a group of democratic conspirators gathered in secret. Their actions would lead to the liberation of their city from Spartan control in 379 BCE. Among them were Pelopidas and Epaminondas, whose names would soon be whispered with reverence across Greece. The sacred band of Thebes, an elite force of 300 warriors, began to train in the cool morning hours, their weapons glinting in the dawn light. The landscape of power continued to shift like shadows across a sundial. Athens slowly rebuilt its strength, establishing the Second Athenian Confederacy in 378 BCE. The sounds of hammers and saws filled the air as shipwrights worked to reconstruct the naval fleet. Meanwhile, social changes rippled through Greek society like a gentle breeze through olive branches. The rise of professional soldiers and mercenaries changed the nature of warfare. The traditional hoplite farmer-citizen gradually gave way to paid professionals, their bronze armor and red-plumed helmets becoming a common sight on the roads between cities. As the years flowed past like water through a clepsydra, the crisis deepened. The Battle of Leuctra in 371 BCE saw Theban forces under Epaminondas shatter Spartan military supremacy, their innovative tactics breaking the spell of Spartan invincibility that had held Greece in thrall for generations. The evening air carried the sound of victory songs from Theban temples, while in Sparta, by 359 BCE, as Philip II ascended to the throne of Macedon in the north, Greece had been transformed. The old certainties had dissolved like morning mist, leaving a world where power flowed between cities like water finding its level. In the gentle aftermath of Athens' defeat, Sparta emerged as the dominant power in Greece, ushering in a period known as the Spartan hegemony. Like a slowly rising tide, Spartan influence spread across the Greek world between 404 and 371 BCE, reshaping the political landscape that had been familiar for generations. The Spartans, under the leadership of figures like Lysander, established a system of control that touched nearly every major Greek city-state. They installed friendly oligarchic governments called dikarchies, groups of 10 men chosen for their loyalty to Sparta. In Athens, they supported the rule of the 30 tyrants, though this harsh regime would last only about 8 months before being overthrown. Picture the streets of these cities, where Spartan garrison soldiers in their distinctive red cloaks would patrol alongside local forces, their sandaled feet echoing against stone pavements. The sound of their footsteps served as a constant reminder of Sparta's watchful presence. In the agoras and gathering places, citizens would speak in hushed tones about political matters, always mindful of who might be listening. King Agesilaus II, who ruled Sparta from 400 to 360 BCE, embodied this period of Spartan dominance. Despite his small stature and slight lameness, he proved to be an capable military commander and shrewd political leader. Under his guidance, Sparta maintained its grip on Greece while also conducting campaigns in Asia Minor against the Persian Empire. The daily rhythm of life under Spartan hegemony brought both stability and tension. Traditional festivals continued, merchants still traded in the marketplaces, and farmers tended their fields as they always had. Yet there was an underlying current of unease, as Greek cities accustomed to independence found themselves answering to Spartan oversight. Like leaves gradually changing color in autumn, resistance to Spartan control grew slowly but steadily. The Corinthian War, 395–387 BCE, saw several major Greek cities, Thebes, Athens, Corinth, and Argos, unite against Sparta, though ultimately without success. The Peace of Alseep in the quiet corners of gymnasiums and symposia, philosophers and citizens contemplated the nature of power and justice. The harsh realities of Spartan rule led many to question whether military might alone could sustain leadership of the Greek world. The sounds of debate and discussion would drift through colonnades and courtyards as Greeks grappled with these fundamental questions. Spartan hegemony reached into every aspect of Greek life, from international relations to local governance. Harmosts, Spartan governors, were stationed in key cities to oversee political affairs and ensure compliance with Spartan interests. The collected tribute flowed like rivers toward Sparta, though the Spartans themselves maintained their traditional aversion to luxury and excess. Yet like a summer storm that builds gradually before breaking, opposition to Spartan control continued to grow. The seeds of resistance took root most strongly in Thebes, where capable leaders like Epaminondas and Pelopidas would eventually challenge Spartan supremacy. The period of Spartan hegemony, though seemingly secure, carried with as the power of Sparta began to wane, another Greek city-state rose to prominence, the ancient city of Thebes. Located in the region of Boeotia, north of Athens, Thebes had long existed in the shadow of its more powerful neighbors. But in the warm glow of a changing Greek world, Theban leaders would forge a path to unprecedented power and influence. In the year 379 BCE, a small group of Theban exiles, led by the talented Pelopidas, quietly returned to their city on a cold winter evening. Moving through the darkened streets, they overthrew the pro-Spartan government that had controlled Thebes, marking the beginning of a remarkable transformation. Among these revolutionaries was Epaminondas, a philosopher and military genius whose the sweet scent of freedom filled the air as Thebes gradually built its strength, forming the Boeotian League with neighboring cities. The sound of hammers and chisels echoed through the streets as fortifications were strengthened, while in the countryside, farmers tended their fields with renewed purpose, knowing they were now working for themselves rather than Spartan overlords. The defining moment came in 371 BCE at the Battle of Leuctra, where Epaminondas introduced his revolutionary, oblique order, tactical formation. Picture the Theban army on that summer morning, the heavy infantry arranged in an unprecedented deep formation on the left wing, while the right wing was refused. The sound of bronze armor clicking together mixed with the steady breathing of soldiers as they advanced. In the years that followed, Thebes exercised its new power with measured steps. Epaminondas led several campaigns into the Peloponnese, establishing friendly governments and even freeing the Messenian helots from Spartan control. The gentle rustle of olive trees in the wind accompanied the sound of construction as new cities were founded. The halls of Theban homes and public buildings buzzed with discussions of philosophy and politics, as the city enjoyed its golden age. Artists and craftsmen worked with renewed vigor, creating works that reflected Theban pride and prosperity. The marketplace filled each morning with the voices of traders and the aroma of fresh bread and herbs, while children played. However, like the setting sun casting long shadows across the Boeotian plain, Theban supremacy would prove brief. The death of Epaminondas at the Battle of Mantinea in 362 BCE, even as his forces achieved victory, marked the beginning of decline. Like a cooling hearth, Theban power gradually diminished without his brilliant leadership. As the years passed, internal conflicts among the Greek cities continued, weakening them all. The sound of marching armies became all too familiar across the landscapes of Greece, while in the north, a new power was rising. Philip II of Macedon watched and waited, understanding that divided Greeks would be easier to conquer than united ones. The final chapter of Theban power came in 338 BCE at the Battle of Chaeronea, where Philip's forces, including his young son Alexander, decisively defeated the combined armies of Thebes and Athens. 2 years later, when Thebes revolted against Macedonian rule, Alexander, now king, made an example of the city. The stones of ancient As the political landscape of ancient Greece shifted through periods of Spartan and Theban dominance, profound social and economic changes were reshaping Greek society. Let us drift through these transformations, observing how daily life evolved during this pivotal era. The 4th century BCE brought significant changes to the traditional social structure of Greek city-states. The old aristocratic order, which had dominated Greek society for centuries, gradually gave way to a more fluid social hierarchy based increasingly on wealth rather than birth. In Athens, we would have witnessed the rise of a new class of wealthy merchants and bankers, their fine homes dotting the hillsides, their influence growing in the agora where citizens gathered. The nature of citizenship itself was evolving. While citizenship remained a precious privilege, the requirements became more standardized across different polis. We can imagine the quiet pride of a merchant's son, newly granted citizenship rights, taking his first steps into the assembly, his sandals touching the worn stone steps where generations had walked before. Economic life was transforming as well. Trade networks expanded across the Mediterranean and into the Black Sea, bringing new wealth and exotic goods to Greek ports. The gentle lapping of waves against merchant ships would have been a constant soundtrack in harbors like Piraeus, where amphorae filled with olive oil, wine, and grain were carefully loaded and unloaded day after day. The introduction of coined money became more widespread, replacing the older barter systems. Silver drachmas clinked in merchants' pouches, while the poorer citizens might handle smaller copper coins for daily transactions. Banking houses emerged, offering loans and holding deposits, their careful record keepers scratching figures onto wax tablets in quiet. Agriculture remained the foundation of the economy, but we see changes here too. Larger estates began to replace smaller family farms in some regions. In the countryside, one might have heard the rhythmic sounds of slaves working the olive groves, their numbers increasing as warfare and trade brought more captives to Greek lands. Women's roles were slowly shifting, particularly in urban areas. While still restricted in many ways, some women gained more economic independence through inheritance and dowry rights. In the markets, one might have seen wealthy women accompanied by slaves, examining fine textiles or selecting pottery for their households. Education became more formalized and widespread, though still primarily for boys from privileged families. The soft murmur of students reciting Homer or practicing rhetoric would have drifted from the columns of gymnasiums and schools of philosophy. Professional teachers, known as sophists, traveled between cities, offering the gap between rich and poor widened during this period. While wealthy citizens enjoyed increasingly luxurious lifestyles, with imported delicacies and fine furniture from abroad, the urban poor often struggled to maintain basic subsistence. The aroma of simple barley bread baking would have mingled with the more exotic scents of imported spices in city markets. Religious practices evolved as well, with traditional civic cults being supplemented by mystery religions and foreign deities. The soft chanting of initiates might be heard in the evening, while during the day, the familiar rituals of traditional festivals continued their ancient rhythms. These social and economic changes created both opportunities and tensions within Greek society, setting the stage for the broader transformations that would come with Alexander's empire. Like gentle waves reshaping a shoreline, these changes gradually but inexorably altered the fabric of Greek life, creating new patterns. As the 4th century BCE progressed, the once mighty Greek city-state system began to show increasing signs of strain and weakness, like a weathered marble column slowly developing hairline cracks. The constant warfare between polis had taken its toll, draining both human and economic resources from communities that had once thrived in their independence. The gentle evening breeze that once carried the sounds of vibrant agora discussions, the traditional hoplite citizen-soldier system, which had been the backbone of Greek military and political life, gradually gave way to professional soldiers and mercenaries. Like autumn leaves drifting from their branches, the deep connection between citizenship and military service began to fade. Wealthy citizens increasingly preferred to pay others to fight rather than serve themselves, weakening the fundamental bond between the polis and its people. In the warm Mediterranean sunshine, cities that had once proudly maintained their autonomy found themselves forming increasingly complex alliances out of necessity. The Second Athenian League, established in 378 BCE, though initially promising, proved unable to recreate the glory of the earlier Delian League. The sound of sandaled feet, economic changes contributed to this weakening, as trade networks expanded beyond the traditional boundaries of individual polis. Silver coins from distant mints clinked in merchants' purses, while commercial relationships increasingly ignored political boundaries. The old system of self-sufficient city-states gradually transformed into a more interconnected economic world, where the barriers between polis became increasingly permeable. Social bonds within cities also began to fray, like loose threads in a once tightly woven cloth. Wealthy citizens often felt more connection to their counterparts in other cities than to their poorer neighbors. The soft murmur of philosophy, the sacred bonds of religion, which had once helped unite individual polis, gradually shifted toward more universal cults and mystery religions. The smoke from temple sacrifices still rose to the gods, but the ceremonies increasingly celebrated deities that transcended city boundaries. The worship of gods like Dionysus and the mysteries of Eleusis drew devotees from across the Greek world, creating connections that super. In the countryside, farmers still tended their olive groves and vineyards as their ancestors had done, but they increasingly found themselves part of larger economic networks. The rhythmic sound of pottery wheels turning in local workshops competed with imported goods from distant cities. The self-sufficient economic model of the polis slowly gave way to regional specialization and increased trade dependency. By the middle of the 4th century BCE, the weakening of the city-state system had created a political vacuum that would eventually be filled by Macedonian power. Like water gradually finding its way through small cracks in a vessel, new forms of political organization began to emerge. The old certainties of polis life slowly dissolved into a more fluid and interconnected world, setting the stage for the dramatic changes that would come with Philip II and Alexander the Great. The- As the Greek city-states weakened, a new power emerged from the north, in the kingdom of Macedon. Let us drift back to 359 BCE, when Philip II ascended to the Macedonian throne. The cool mountain air of northern Greece swept across a land that would soon transform the Hellenic world forever. In those early days, Macedon was considered a backwater by the proud Greek city-states, a realm of shepherds and rough-hewn warriors dwelling in the rugged highlands. Yet Philip II possessed a vision that would reshape history. With patience and determination, he began modernizing his kingdom's military, drawing inspiration from the most effective aspects of Greek warfare while innovating new approaches. Picture the Macedonian phalanx taking shape under Philip's guidance, soldiers training with the sarissa, a spear nearly 18 feet long, its bronze tip gleaming in the morning sun. The rhythmic movement of these warriors drilling in formation became a common sight across the Macedonian countryside. Philip introduced a professional standing army, where men served year-round rather than just during. Through the gentle flow of seasons, Philip implemented reforms that strengthened Macedon's economy and administrative systems. He secured the kingdom's rich gold and silver mines, providing wealth to fund his military ambitions. The sound of hammers rang through expanded shipyards, while merchants increasingly traveled the improved road networks that connected Macedon's growing settlements. As the years passed like leaves on an autumn breeze, Philip began expanding his influence southward. Through a careful blend of diplomacy and military pressure, he gradually drew more Greek cities into Macedon's orbit. Some came willingly, seeking protection or advantage. Others resisted, but found themselves unable to match Philip's professional army. The great orator Demosthenes in Athens raised his voice in warning against Macedonian expansion, delivering his famous Philippics. Yet many Greeks were slow to recognize the gathering storm. By 338 BCE, Philip had secured control over most of mainland Greece through his victory at the Battle of Chaeronea, where the traditional Greek fort. Picture the evening after that decisive battle, as campfires dotted the plains of Boeotia. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and cooking fires, while soldiers spoke in hushed tones of the day's events. Among them walked Philip's young son Alexander, already showing signs of the legendary leader he would become. In the following years, Philip worked to unite the Greek world under his leadership, establishing the League of Corinth in 337 BCE. The League formalized Macedonian hegemony while respecting the internal autonomy of member cities. Markets buzzed with increased trade, while artists and philosophers continued their work under this new political reality. Philip began preparing for an ambitious campaign against the Persian Empire, but fate had other plans. In 336 BCE, while attending his daughter's wedding celebration, Philip was assassinated. The sound of music and laughter turned to cries of shock and confusion as the great king fell. His son Alexander, just 20 years old, would inherit both his father's kingdom and his unrealized dreams of conquest. As we rest here in this moment of transition, we can feel the quiet tension in the air, the pause between Philip's remarkable achievement in unifying Greece and the extraordinary events that would unfold under his son's leadership. The stage was set for an even greater transformation of the ancient world. As Philip II ascended to the Macedonian throne, he began implementing a series of thoughtful reforms that would transform his kingdom into a formidable power. Let us drift back to those transformative years, as the gentle winds of change swept across the northern reaches of the Greek world. The air was filled with the steady rhythm of hammers on anvils and the soft rustling of grain fields that would feed an expanding army. In those early days of his reign, Philip focused first on restructuring the Macedonian military. The sound of marching feet echoed through the valleys as he introduced the famous Macedonian phalanx, with its long sarissa spears gleaming in the sunlight, reaching up to 18 feet in length. Soldiers trained in the cool morning air, their bronze armor catching the first rays of dawn as they learned to move as one coordinated unit. Philip's reforms extended beyond just military matters. In the royal city of Pella, craftsmen worked diligently to improve the kingdom's economy. The clinking of silver coins became more common in marketplaces as Philip established a new monetary system, taking advantage of the rich gold and silver mines of Mount Pangaeum. The sweet scent of cedar wood filled the air as shipwrights expanded the Macedonian fleet, while the sounds of construction echoed throughout the 350s BCE. Philip methodically extended Macedonian influence. Like a slowly rising tide, his authority spread first to neighboring regions. The acquisition of Amphipolis in 357 BCE provided access to valuable timber resources, while the capture of Crenides, renamed Philippi, in the quiet chambers of his palace, Philip demonstrated remarkable diplomatic acumen. He arranged marriages to forge alliances, including his union with Olympias of Epirus, who would become mother to Alexander the Great. The halls of Pella welcomed visitors from across the Greek world, as Philip's court became a center of cultural and political activity. The melodious sounds of symposiums. By the mid-340s BCE, Philip's influence had grown considerably. The Macedonian army moved with practiced precision, their footsteps marking time like a steady heartbeat across the landscape. The conquest of Thrace brought rich agricultural lands under Macedonian control, while victories over the Illyrians secured the kingdom's western borders. In city after city, the sight of Macedonian garrisons became increasingly common. As Philip's power grew, tension with Athens and other Greek city-states increased like a slowly gathering storm. The great orator Demosthenes warned his fellow Athenians about the growing Macedonian threat, his words echoing through the assembly like distant thunder. Yet Philip's diplomatic skill often proved as effective as his military might. He joined the Amphictyonic Council, positioning Macedonia as a defender of Apollo's shrine at Delphi, where the sweet smell of incense still rose from the sacred precinct. The culmination of Philip's expansion came at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BCE. The summer air was heavy with anticipation as Macedonian and Greek forces met on the plains of Boeotia. The outcome would reshape the Greek world, as Philip's victory established Macedonian hegemony over most of Greece. In the aftermath, he formed the League of Corinth, bringing the once independent city-states under. As the Greek world underwent profound changes, military innovations emerged that would transform warfare forever. Let us explore these developments with peaceful contemplation, as the gentle waves of progress washed over the ancient Mediterranean shores. The traditional Greek phalanx, with its densely packed ranks of heavily armed hoplite warriors, had dominated warfare for centuries. But in the mid-4th century BCE, new ideas began to take root, like spring flowers gradually emerging from winter soil. Philip II of Macedon introduced revolutionary changes to this time-tested formation, creating what became known as the Macedonian phalanx. Picture the sight of these soldiers, standing shoulder to shoulder, each holding the fearsome sarissa, a spear nearly 18 feet in length, more than twice as long as the traditional Greek spear. The morning sun would have glinted off their bronze helmets as they moved in perfect coordination, like rippling wheat in a summer breeze. The sarissa allowed the front 5 ranks to present their spear points simultaneously, creating an impenetrable wall of bronze tips that no enemy could easily approach. The Macedonian army also saw the introduction of more flexible and specialized units. The hypaspists, elite shield-bearing infantry, served as a crucial link between the heavy phalanx and the cavalry, moving with greater agility across varied terrain. Like water flowing around rocks in a stream, they could adapt to changing battlefield conditions with remarkable. Perhaps most significantly, Philip II revolutionized the role of cavalry in Greek warfare. The companion cavalry, or hederoi, became a powerful striking force rather than merely a supporting arm. These mounted warriors, drawn from the Macedonian nobility, were trained to execute the wedge formation. Imagine a flock of birds. The integration of these various arms, the phalanx, hypaspists, and cavalry, created a combined arms force of unprecedented effectiveness. Like musicians in a well-practiced orchestra, each element worked in harmony with the others, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. Military engineering also saw significant advances during this period. The development of more sophisticated siege engines, including improved catapults and siege towers, allowed armies to overcome previously impregnable fortress walls. The sound of these massive machines being constructed would have echoed through military camps, while engineers carefully calculated trajectories and distances. These innovations were accompanied by changes in military organization and logistics. The professional standing army, maintained year-round rather than just during campaign seasons, became a reality under Philip II. Soldiers now trained continuously, honing their skills through regular drills and exercises. The rhythm of their synchronized movements would have been a common sound in Macedonian military camps. Supply systems became more sophisticated, with carefully planned networks of depots and transport arrangements supporting longer campaigns. Like a carefully tended garden, these logistical systems required constant attention and maintenance, but yielded remarkable results in sustaining armies far from home. These military innovations would prove crucial in the campaigns that followed, particularly under Alexander the Great. They represented not just technical advances, but a fundamental shift in how warfare was conducted in the ancient world. The echoes of these changes would resonate through centuries, influencing military thought and practice well into the future, like ripples spreading outward from a stone drop. As the military innovations of Philip II transformed the Macedonian army, his diplomatic prowess proved equally revolutionary in reshaping the Greek world. Let us drift peacefully through the intricate web of alliances, deceptions, and negotiations that characterize this pivotal period in ancient history. Philip II understood that true power lay not only in military might, but in the subtle art of diplomatic manipulation. In the quiet chambers where treaties were drafted, and in the hushed conversations between envoys, he masterfully played Greek city-states against one another. The gentle whispers of promises and carefully crafted agreements became as potent as any sword or spear. During the 340s BCE, Philip employed a sophisticated strategy of divide and rule. Like a skilled weaver working with delicate threads, he would offer friendship to one city-state while threatening another, creating a complex tapestry of shifting loyalties. In the marble halls of Athens, concerned voices could be heard discussing Philip's growing influence, as he extended generous peace terms to some. The Sacred War of 356–46 BCE provided Philip with perfect opportunities for diplomatic maneuvering. Through careful negotiation, he positioned himself as the protector of Apollo's shrine at Delphi, earning religious legitimacy while extending his influence southward. The soft footsteps of diplomatic messengers carried his words across Greece, as he gradually transformed from a northern barbarian king into a respected arbitrator of Greek affairs. In the peaceful gardens where diplomatic meetings took place, Philip would often host representatives from various city-states, treating them to lavish banquets where wine flowed freely and conversations revealed valuable intelligence. The sweet aroma of incense and the gentle clinking of golden cups accompanied discussions that would shape the destiny of Greece. Perhaps his most masterful diplomatic achievement was the creation of the League of Corinth in 337 BCE. Like a gentle stream gradually wearing away stone, Philip's patient diplomacy transformed independent Greek city-states into members of a confederation under his leadership. The morning air was filled with the sound of heralds announcing new alliances, as one by one, the proud cities of Greece accepted Macedonian leadership. Even his marriages were carefully calculated diplomatic moves. Philip's multiple wives came from various noble families and kingdoms, each union creating new bonds of loyalty and obligation. The soft rustle of wedding veils and the melodious sounds of marriage celebrations masked the political nature of these personal arrangements. In Athens, the great orator Demosthenes warned his fellow citizens about Philip's diplomatic tactics, his powerful voice echoing through the assembly as he delivered his famous Philippics. Yet many found themselves drawn to Philip's promises of peace and prosperity, like moths to a gentle flame. The warm Mediterranean breeze carried both words of warning and wisdom. As we rest here in contemplation, we can appreciate how Philip's diplomatic manipulation laid the groundwork for the vast empire his son Alexander would later build. The patient cultivation of allies, the careful neutralization of enemies, and the skillful balance of threat and reward created a framework of Macedonian power that would reshape the ancient world. The quiet conversations in marble halls, the carefully worded treaties written on crisp papyrus, and the delicate dance of diplomatic relations would continue to influence Greek politics long after Philip's time. As our thoughts drift toward Alexander's coming reign, we can see how his father's diplomatic legacy provided the foundation for even greater achievements to come. As the summer sun rose over the rolling hills of Boeotia in 338 BCE, the morning mists gradually lifted to reveal two formidable armies facing each other across the fertile plain near Chaeronea. On one side stood the combined forces of Athens and Thebes, their bronze shields gleaming in the early light, while opposite them waited the Macedonian army under Philip II and his young son Alexander. The air was thick with anticipation. The allied Greek forces numbered around 35,000 warriors, their ranks filled with proud citizens defending their independence. The Sacred Band of Thebes, an elite force of 300 pairs of warriors bound by sacred oaths, stood ready to defend their homeland. Across the field, Philip II commanded approximately 30,000 troops, including his revolutionary phalanx formations armed with the long sarissa spears that had proven so effective in previous campaigns. As the morning progressed, the two armies began their careful movements across the landscape. Philip II implemented a masterful strategy, gradually pulling his right wing back in a feigned retreat. The Greek allies, sensing an opportunity, advanced eagerly, creating gaps in their formation as they pursued the seemingly faltering Macedonians. The sounds of marching feet and clinking armor filled the air as the young Alexander, just 18 years old, commanded the left wing of the Macedonian army. Watching intently for the precise moment, he noticed the gaps appearing in the Greek lines. With remarkable timing, he led his cavalry in a powerful charge through one of these openings, while Philip's forces suddenly halted their retreat and counterattacked. The peaceful morning erupted into the controlled chaos of ancient warfare. The sacred band of Thebes, true to their reputation, refused to yield even as the battle turned against them. They stood their ground, fighting to the last man, their final moments marked by extraordinary courage and dedication to their cause. The dusty plain bore witness to their sacrifice as the sun climbed higher in the sky. By early afternoon, the outcome had become clear. The Macedonian victory was complete, marking a decisive turning point in Greek history. The familiar world of independent city-states was drawing to a close, giving way to a new era of Macedonian dominance. The battlefield gradually fell silent, save for the winds that swept across the plain. The aftermath of Chaeronea brought significant changes to the Greek world. Philip II treated Athens with unexpected leniency, understanding the importance of maintaining stability and cooperation for his future plans. The Athenians were allowed to retain their democracy and naval power, though now within the framework of Macedonian leadership. Thebes faced harsher consequences, receiving a Macedonian garrison and losing much of its former influence. In the following months, Philip established the League of Corinth, a new alliance that united most of the Greek city-states under his leadership. The quiet chambers where once proud cities had independently debated their futures now echoed with discussions of a new common purpose, the planned invasion of Persia. The Battle of Chaeronea had transformed the political landscape of Greece, setting the stage for even greater change. The significance of this battle extended far beyond its immediate outcome. It marked the end of an era when Greek city-states determined their own destinies, and heralded the beginning of a new age that would soon see Alexander the Great build upon his father's achievements to create an empire spanning 3 continents. The winds of change that blew across the battlefield at Chaeronea would soon carry Greek culture and influence to the far corners of the north. Let us drift back to the year 336 BCE, when the assassination of Philip II of Macedon brought his young son Alexander to power at the age of 20. The summer air was heavy with uncertainty as the young prince, already renowned for his military prowess and education under Aristotle, assumed the mantle of kingship. Like gentle waves spreading across the Aegean, Alexander's first actions were measured yet decisive, like the careful placement of stones in a temple foundation. He secured his position in Macedon and reasserted control over the Greek cities that had begun to stir with thoughts of rebellion. The streets of Thebes echoed with the sound of marching feet as Alexander's forces demonstrated their might, convincing most cities to renew their allegiance to Macedonian leadership. With Greece secured, Alexander turned his gaze eastward toward the vast Persian Empire. In the spring of 334 BCE, he crossed the Hellespont with an army of approximately 40,000 infantry and 5,500 cavalry. The morning mist rising from the strait seemed to part before them, as if nature itself acknowledged the magnitude of this undertaking. The army moved like a great river flowing east, carrying Greek culture and empire. The Persian Empire lay before them like a tapestry of diverse lands and peoples. At the Battle of Granicus, Alexander's forces encountered their first major resistance. The clash of bronze weapons and the thundering of hooves filled the air as the Macedonian cavalry executed their brilliant tactical maneuvers. Victory here opened the way into Asia Minor, where city after city, time seemed to flow like honey as Alexander's campaigns continued year after year. The siege of Tyre in 332 BCE demonstrated his innovative military mind, as he constructed a causeway to reach the island city. The salty spray of the Mediterranean mixed with the scent of cedar as his engineers worked tirelessly to bridge the gap. Egypt welcomed him as a liberator, and in the shifting sands of the desert, the decisive battle came at Gaugamela in 331 BCE, where the vast Persian army under Darius III faced Alexander's smaller but more mobile force. The autumn wind carried dust across the plain as the two armies met. Alexander's tactical genius shone like the morning sun as he led his companion cavalry in a decisive charge that broke the Persian center, sending Darius into flight. As Alexander pressed eastward, his empire grew like a garden in spring, incorporating new territories and cultures. He reached the Indus River by 326 BCE, where the humid air and unfamiliar landscapes tested his army's resolve. The sound of exotic birds and the sight of strange beasts marked their entry. Yet even as Alexander's empire reached its greatest extent, spanning from Greece to India, the seeds of future challenges were being sown. The great conqueror's adoption of Persian customs and his attempts to blend Greek and Eastern cultures created tension among his Macedonian veterans, whose murmuring discontent was like a distant thunder promising future storms. When Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BC, as Alexander ascended to power, his first challenges emerged swiftly, like shadows lengthening across the Macedonian plains at dusk. The young king faced immediate resistance from various Greek city-states who saw his father's death as an opportunity to break free from Macedonian control. The gentle whispers of rebellion soon grew into more substantial movements that required Alexander's careful attention. In the cool autumn of 336 BCE, Alexander first needed to secure his position within Macedonia itself. Some questioned whether this 20-year-old could truly fill the formidable shoes of Philip II. The nobility watched with measured skepticism as Alexander began consolidating his power, walking the marble halls of Pella with growing confidence. He appointed trusted advisors, including the experienced General Antipater, who would later serve. The soft rustling of diplomatic messages carried news of unrest in Thebes and Athens. These proud cities, their ancient stones warming in the Mediterranean sun, had begun testing the boundaries of their submission to Macedonian authority. Alexander responded with characteristic swiftness, though not yet with the full force he would later become known for. His armies moved south through the familiar paths of Greece, their footsteps echoing against the well. In these early months, Alexander demonstrated a careful balance of force and diplomacy. Like a skilled potter working with delicate clay, he shaped his responses to each challenge. When Thebes considered revolt, he offered both the olive branch and the sword, giving them opportunity to maintain peace while making clear the consequences of rebellion. The morning mist still clung to the valley. The process of consolidation extended beyond mere military presence. Alexander worked to strengthen the Corinthian League, the alliance of Greek city-states his father had established. In the assembly halls and temples of various cities, representatives gathered to renew their oaths of loyalty, their voices mixing with the gentle flutter of doves in the rafters. The League provided a framework for maintaining Greek unity, though all. During this period of early consolidation, Alexander also began implementing administrative reforms that would later prove crucial for his expanding empire. The smooth operation of government required careful attention to detail, from the collection of taxes to the maintenance of roads that wound like ribbons through the mountainous landscape. In the ports, ships continued their daily rhythm of arrival and departure, their sails catching the same winds that had carried Greece. Perhaps most significantly, these early challenges helped Alexander refine his approach to leadership. Like a musician learning to master complex melodies, he developed the skills that would serve him well in his later campaigns. The warm glow of oil lamps illuminated late-night councils as the seasons turned and Alexander's position strengthened, the whispers of doubt gradually faded. The marketplaces resumed their usual bustle, farmers returned to their fields, and the rhythm of daily life continued under the new reality of Macedonian leadership. This period of consolidation, though less dramatic than the great battles as Alexander secured his position in Greece and the surrounding regions, his ambitious gaze turned eastward toward the vast Persian Empire. The campaign that would define his legacy began in 334 BCE, when he crossed the Hellespont with approximately 37,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry. The gentle waves that carried his army across these historic waters marked the beginning of an expedition that would reshape. In the warm spring air, Alexander's forces first encountered Persian resistance at the Granicus River. The morning mist still hung over the water as his army approached the Persian forces stationed along the steep banks. Despite the challenging terrain and the Persian cavalry's advantageous position, Alexander's tactical brilliance shone through. The Macedonian phalanx's long spear. Moving deeper into Persian territory, Alexander's army passed through rich agricultural lands and bustling trading cities. The local populations often witnessed the approach of his forces with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. The Macedonian army's arrival would bring the subtle sounds of different languages mingling in the marketplace, as Greek merchants and soldiers interacted with locals. The decisive battle at Issus in 333 BCE brought Alexander face to face with Darius III, the Persian great king. The narrow coastal plain between the mountains and the sea filled with the quiet tension of two massive armies preparing for combat. The autumn air carried the scent of the nearby Mediterranean as Alexander's cavalry executed their famous wedge formation, driving through the. As Alexander's forces moved through the Levant and Egypt, they encountered diverse cultures and ancient traditions. In Egypt, the soft rustle of palm fronds in the desert wind accompanied Alexander's peaceful entry into the country. The Egyptians welcomed him as a liberator from Persian rule, and in the temple of Amun at Siwa Oasis, priests proclaimed him the son of Amun. The campaign reached its climactic phase at Gaugamela in 331 BCE. The vast plain stretched out before the armies like a golden carpet under the autumn sun. The morning air was cool and still as both sides prepared for battle. Alexander's innovative tactics, including the careful positioning of his troops to counter Darius's scythe chariots, demonstrated the evolution of warfare under his leadership. Following Darius's defeat and subsequent death, Alexander pressed eastward into the heart of the Persian Empire. The army passed through the great cities of Persepolis, Susa, and Babylon, where the magnificent architecture and advanced civilization of Persia left lasting impressions on the Macedonian soldiers. The sweet fragrance of hanging gardens. The Persian campaign transformed not just the political landscape, but the cultural fabric of the ancient world. As Alexander's army moved through these lands, they established new cities, created trade networks, and facilitated the exchange of ideas. The gentle mixing of Greek and Persian customs, from artistic styles to administrative practices, began to create a new cultural synthesis that would characterize the Hellenistic world. Having secured his hold on Persia, Alexander's gaze turned ever eastward, drawn by the allure of distant lands and the dream of an empire stretching to the edges of the known world. As we rest and contemplate these remarkable journeys, let us follow the gentle flow of his eastern conquest. In 330 BCE, Alexander's army moved through the mountainous regions of what is now Afghanistan, where the cool mountain air carried whispers of exotic kingdoms beyond. The local Bactrian and Sogdian territories proved challenging to subdue, their people as rugged and resilient as the terrain they inhabited. The army pressed onward through the Hindu Kush Mountains, where the soldiers' sandaled feet crunched through snow and ice, their breath visible in the thin, cold air. The men who had started their journey in the warm Mediterranean climate now found themselves in landscapes they had never imagined, carrying their Greek culture into lands that seemed to exist only in legends. By 327 BCE, Alexander had reached the borders of ancient India. The air grew thick with moisture as his army descended into the Indus Valley, where the scent of unfamiliar spices and the calls of strange birds filled their senses. Here, they encountered King Porus and his forces at the Battle of the Hydaspes River. Through the steady summer rain, though victorious, Alexander showed characteristic wisdom in his treatment of Porus, allowing him to retain his kingdom as a subordinate ally. This pattern of incorporating local rulers and customs into his growing empire helped maintain stability across the vast distances his authority now spanned. In the marketplaces of newly conquered cities, Greek merchants now traded alongside Persian, Indian, and Central Asian sellers. The army continued southeast until they reached the Hyphasis River, where the weight of distance and time finally began to tell. The soldiers, weary from years of marching, their armor weathered by sun and rain, yearned for home. Even as Alexander dreamed of pressing on to the Eastern Ocean, his men's hearts pulled them westward, like leaves drawn back to their roots by an autumn wind. In a moment that echoed across history, Alexander reluctantly turned back in 326 BCE. He ordered the construction of 12 great altars by the river's edge, monuments to mark the furthest reach of his journey. The warm stone of these structures stood as silent sentinels, watching as the Macedonian army began its long journey homeward. The return journey took them down the Indus River, through the harsh Gedrosian desert, where the hot winds whispered tales of their achievements to the endless sands. Alexander had created something unprecedented, an empire that stretched from the Adriatic Sea to the Indus River, encompassing countless peoples, languages, and traditions. In the quiet evening hours in cities across this vast realm, as the Greek world expanded and evolved through conquest and cultural exchange, remarkable innovations transformed both military tactics and broader society. The Macedonian phalanx, perfected under Philip II and Alexander, represented a revolutionary advancement in warfare. Picture the synchronized movement of thousands of soldiers. The sound of thousands of armored feet marching in unison echoed across valleys and plains, while the morning sun glinted off polished bronze helmets and shield bosses. This fearsome formation was supported by companion cavalry, highly mobile mounted units that could execute complex maneuvers with unprecedented precision. The gentle thunder of hooves accompanied their course. In the realm of siege warfare, Greek engineers developed increasingly sophisticated machines. The soft creaking of wooden towers and the steady rhythm of stone-throwing engines became familiar sounds outside city walls. The torsion-powered catapult, first developed in Syracuse around 399 BCE, could launch projectiles with devastating force, while mobile siege. Beyond the battlefield, cultural innovations flourished in this era of expanded horizons. The meeting of Greek and Eastern traditions created new forms of art, architecture, and thought. In the newly founded cities across Alexander's empire, broad colonnaded streets stretched towards central marketplaces where traders from distant lands exchanged not just goods, but ideas. The soft murmur of different languages mingled in the air as merchants from India discussed philosophy with Greek settlers, and Persian artisans shared techniques with Macedonian craftsmen. The establishment of great centers of learning, particularly in Alexandria, created spaces where scholars could pursue knowledge in unprecedented ways. Inside the famous Library of Alexandria, the rustle of papyrus scrolls and the quiet discussions of learned men and women from across the known world contributed to advances in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and literature. The careful copying and preservation of Greek artistic traditions evolved as they encountered new influences. Sculptors began incorporating more dynamic poses and emotional expressions in their works, while painters developed new techniques for depicting perspective and natural movement. The gentle tap of chisels on marble and the subtle strokes of brushes on pottery created works that would influence artists for centuries to come. In the realm of everyday life, new technologies improved agriculture, textile production, and metallurgy. The soft whir of improved pottery wheels and the steady rhythm of more efficient looms could be heard in workshops across the Greek world. Farmers adopted new irrigation techniques and crop varieties, while improved shipbuilding methods allowed for safer and more extensive maritime trade. The Greek language itself evolved into Koine Greek, a standardized form that became the common tongue across the vast territories of Alexander's empire. This linguistic innovation allowed for unprecedented cultural exchange and the spread of ideas across diverse populations. The sound of this shared language in marketplaces, temples, and schools became a unifying force that transcended traditional boundaries of city-state and ethnicity. These military and cultural innovations laid the groundwork for the Hellenistic age, creating a rich tapestry of shared knowledge and experience that would influence civilizations for millennia to come. The legacy of this period of innovation continues to resonate through history, shaping our understanding of warfare, art, science, and cultural exchange. As the sun set on Alexander's remarkable life in 323 BCE, the vast empire he had built stood at a crossroads, ushering in what would become known as the Hellenistic period. Like gentle waves spreading across the Mediterranean and beyond, Greek culture, language, and ideas began flowing into distant lands, creating a rich tapestry of cultural exchange that would endure for centuries. In the wake of Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals, known as the Diadochi, who established their own kingdoms. Ptolemy claimed Egypt, creating the Ptolemaic dynasty that would last until Cleopatra. Seleucus took control of vast territories in Asia, while Antigonus and his descendants ruled Macedonia and parts of Greece. These new kingdoms became centers of learning and cultural fusion, where Greek ideas. Alexandria in Egypt emerged as the crown jewel of this new Hellenistic world. Its famous library housed countless scrolls of knowledge, while scholars from across the known world gathered in its marble halls to study and debate. The soft whispers of philosophical discussions echoed through colonnaded walkways, as minds from different cultures shared their wisdom and insights. In the realm of art and architecture, Hellenistic style flowed like a gentle stream from classical Greek foundations, becoming more elaborate and emotional. Sculptors created works of unprecedented realism and drama, such as the Nike of Samothrace, its windswept drapery seemingly caught in an eternal breeze. The great altar of Pergamon reached toward the heavens, its friezes telling tales of gods and giants in stone. Scientific knowledge bloomed in this fertile cultural soil. Archimedes developed his principles of mathematics and physics in Syracuse, while Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy from his studies in Alexandria. The steady accumulation of knowledge continued as scholars built upon the foundations laid by their predecessors. Philosophy evolved as schools of thought spread throughout the Hellenistic world. The peaceful gardens of Epicurean communities offered refuge for those seeking tranquility through simple living, while Stoic philosophers taught acceptance and inner peace amidst life's changes. These teachings would later influence Roman thought and continue to resonate through the centuries. Trade routes, like threads in a vast tapestry, connected the Hellenistic kingdoms, carrying not just goods but ideas and innovations. Greek became the common language of commerce and learning, while local languages and customs continued to thrive alongside it. In marketplace and palace alike, the sounds of different languages mingled as merchants and scholars from distant lands met and exchanged knowledge. Cities throughout the Hellenistic world shared common features: theaters, gymnasiums, and public spaces where citizens gathered. The gentle rhythm of daily life continued as people went about their business, prayed in temples both old and new, and participated in festivals that blended Greek and local traditions. This cultural synthesis would leave an indelible mark on human civilization. The Hellenistic period created bridges between East and West that would endure long after the political structures of the era had faded. Libraries preserved knowledge that would later help spark the Renaissance, while philosophical ideas continued to influence thinkers throughout the ages. As we rest here in contemplation of this remarkable period, we can imagine the soft evening breeze carrying the whispered conversations of scholars through the streets of Alexandria, the quiet footsteps of traders along the Silk Road, and the gentle rustle of papyrus scrolls being carefully copied and preserved for future. In the warm summer of 323 BCE, as the evening air hung heavy over the grand city of Babylon, Alexander the Great lay in his palace, consumed by a mysterious fever. The great conqueror, who had seemed almost immortal in his achievements, was facing his final days at the young age of 32. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, his loyal companions gathered around his bedside, their whispered conversations echoing through the marble halls. The circumstances of Alexander's death have long puzzled historians. Some ancient sources suggest he was poisoned, while others point to malaria or other diseases that were common in the marshy regions around Babylon. What we know with certainty is that his condition steadily worsened over several days. When asked who should inherit his vast empire, Alexander reportedly whispered to the strongest, though even this detail is debated by scholars. As news of Alexander's death spread across his empire, a gentle breeze of uncertainty turned into a gathering storm of political crisis. The vast territories he had conquered, stretching from Greece to India, now faced a profound leadership vacuum. In Macedonia, Alexander's generals, known as the Diadochi, began positioning themselves for power, their careful diplomatic maneuvers masking deeper ambitions. The immediate succession crisis centered around two potential heirs: Alexander's unborn child by Roxana, later born as Alexander IV, and his half-brother Philip III or Hideous, who had mental disabilities. The generals initially agreed to a compromise, with Philip III and the unborn child named as joint kings under a regency council. Perdiccas, who had received Alexander's ring from his deathbed, became the first regent. This arrangement, however, proved as delicate as morning frost. The generals, each commanding significant military forces and controlling different regions, began to eye their territories as personal domains. Ptolemy secured Egypt, where he would establish a long-lasting dynasty. Antigonus took much of Asia Minor, while Lysimachus controlled Thrace. Cassander gradually strengthened his position in Macedonia itself. The years following Alexander's death saw a slow unraveling of unity, like threads pulling loose from a tapestry. The once mighty empire fragmented into separate kingdoms, each headed by one of Alexander's former commanders. These Hellenistic kingdoms would maintain many aspects of Greek culture and administration, but they would never achieve the unified vision Alexander had pursued. The succession crisis had profound effects on daily life throughout the empire. Merchants who had enjoyed safe passage across vast territories now faced new borders and tariffs. Local governors who had answered to a single authority found themselves caught between competing powers. In cities and villages, people who had lived under Alexander's relatively stable rule now faced uncertainty about the fates of Alexander's family proved particularly tragic. His wife Roxana and young son Alexander IV were eventually murdered by Cassander in 310 BCE, while his mother Olympias met her end in 316 BCE. The old Macedonian royal house, which had risen to unprecedented heights under Philip II and Alexander, was extinguished as the sun set on the unified empire Alexander had built. A new dawn was rising on the Hellenistic age. The succession crisis, though tumultuous, would lead to a rich period of cultural exchange and innovation, as different centers of power competed not only in warfare but in learning, art, and architecture. The dream of a single empire had ended, but the legacy of Greek civilization would continue to flourish in new and diverse ways. As the dust settled following Alexander's death and the wars of the successors, new kingdoms gradually emerged from the vast empire, each shaped by a unique blend of Greek and local traditions. Let us explore how these Hellenistic kingdoms took form, as the world Alexander created transformed into something both familiar and new. In the peaceful stillness of the evening, imagine the Mediterranean world of the early 3rd century BCE. Three major kingdoms had crystallized from the chaos: the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid Empire in Asia, and the Antigonid dynasty in Macedonia. Each was ruled by one of Alexander's former generals or their descendants, who had transformed themselves from military commanders into kings. In Egypt, Ptolemy Isoter established a dynasty that would last for nearly 3 centuries. Picture the bustling streets of Alexandria, where Greek philosophers walked alongside Egyptian priests, and merchants from across the known world traded in its famous harbor. The Ptolemaic kings maintained Egyptian traditions while introducing Greek culture, creating a unique synthesis. The vast Seleucid Empire, founded by Seleucus I Nicator, stretched from the Mediterranean to the borders of India. In the quiet courtyards of Antioch and Seleucia on the Tigris, Greek colonists mingled with Persian nobles and Mesopotamian scholars. The Seleucids built new cities across their realm, each one a center of Greek culture in the heart of Asia, while respecting and incorporating. In Macedonia and Greece, the Antigonid dynasty, established by Monophthalmus and continued by his descendants, maintained the closest links to traditional Greek culture. The ancient cities of Greece continued their daily rhythms, though now under the watchful eye of Macedonian garrisons. In the agoras and gymnasiums, people still debated philosophy and politics, though the context had changed. Smaller kingdoms also emerged in this new world. The kingdom of Pergamon in Asia Minor, under the Attalid dynasty, became a celebrated center of learning and artistic achievement. In Bactria, far to the east, Greek rulers established a kingdom that would later influence the art and culture of India. The Hellenistic kingdoms were characterized by their sophisticated bureaucracies, standing armies, and elaborate court cultures. Greek became the language of administration and high culture throughout these territories, while local languages continued to be used in daily life. The kings sponsored great cultural projects, from the famous Library of Alexandria to the scientific research of scholars like Archimedes. In the countryside, life continued much as it had before, with farmers tending their fields and merchants plying their trades. Yet even here, the influence of Hellenistic culture gradually made itself felt, as Greek customs, art, and ideas spread through the population. The great cities founded by Alexander, this new world was both more connected and more complex than ever before. Trade routes stretched from India to Italy, Ideas flowed freely between different regions, and new forms of art and literature emerged from the cultural exchange. The Hellenistic kingdoms would continue to evolve and compete with one another, creating a dynamic system that would influence the development of both Eastern and Western civilizations for centuries to come. As the Hellenistic kingdoms established themselves across Alexander's former empire, a remarkable cultural transformation began to unfold across the ancient world. Greek culture, language, and ways of life gradually blended with local traditions, creating something entirely new, a fusion that would shape civilization for centuries to come. In the quiet streets of newly founded cities like Alexandria in Egypt and Antioch in Syria, Greek colonists lived alongside native peoples, sharing their customs and daily routines. The soft sounds of both Greek and local languages could be heard in the marketplaces, while the gentle aroma of familiar Mediterranean herbs mingled with exotic Eastern spices. Within these cosmopolitan centers, scholars gathered. The spread of Hellenism brought Greek architecture to distant lands, with elegant colonnaded buildings and temples rising alongside traditional structures. In the peaceful courtyards of gymnasiums and schools, young people from various backgrounds exercised and studied together, learning Greek philosophy while maintaining their ancestral traditions. The measured steps of dancers and athletes echoed through these spaces, where Greek athletic competition. Artists working in this period created new styles that harmoniously combined Greek artistic principles with Eastern motifs. In workshops throughout the Hellenistic world, craftsmen shaped precious metals and stones into jewelry that displayed this cultural synthesis, while painters and sculptors developed new techniques that captured both the idealism of Greek art and the realism of Eastern traditions. The Greek language, in its common form known as koine, became the lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean and beyond, spoken in ports from Macedonia to India. Yet this was not a one-way exchange. Greek vocabulary absorbed words from Persian, Egyptian, and other languages, enriching its expression. In the realm of religion, traditional Greek deities began to merge with local gods and goddesses. The worship of Isis from Egypt spread throughout the Greek world, while Zeus was sometimes identified with local sky gods. In temples and household shrines, people offered prayers and sacrifices that reflected this spiritual synthesis, their whispered devotions carrying both Greek and Eastern influences. Scientific and philosophical inquiry flourished in this environment of cultural exchange. At the Great Library of Alexandria, scholars from different traditions worked side by side, sharing knowledge and developing new understandings of the world. The gentle rustling of papyrus. The Hellenistic period saw the emergence of new literary forms and artistic expression that reflected this cultural mixing. Writers composed works that combined Greek poetic forms with Eastern themes, while storytellers wove together tales from different traditions. In theaters and public spaces, performances incorporated elements from various cultural traditions, creating new forms of entertainment that appealed to diverse. This cultural fusion was not without its challenges, as some communities sought to maintain their traditional ways of life while others embraced change. Yet over time, the steady flow of ideas and practices between different peoples created a rich tapestry of shared culture that would influence future civilizations. The legacy of Hellenistic cultural fusion would continue to resonate through the centuries, shaping the development of art, literature. As the waves of Greek influence rippled outward across the Mediterranean world, the lasting impact of this remarkable civilization would be felt for centuries to come. The blend of Greek culture with local traditions created something entirely new, a rich tapestry of art, architecture, language, and thought that would shape the development of countless societies. In the quiet libraries and academies that dotted the Mediterranean coastline, Greek philosophical texts were carefully copied and studied. The words of Plato and Aristotle found their way into Arabic translations, preserved by scholars who recognized their timeless wisdom. These ancient Greek ideas would later be rediscovered by medieval European thinkers, sparking new waves of intellectual exploration. The Greek language itself became a lasting legacy, serving as the lingua franca of trade and scholarship across the eastern Mediterranean. In busy ports and marketplaces, merchants conversed in Greek, while in temples and civic buildings, inscriptions in Greek letters told stories of local heroes and gods. This common language facilitated the exchange of ideas and helped create a shared cultural sphere that transcended political boundaries. Greek architectural forms spread far beyond their origins, their graceful columns and precise proportions inspiring builders from Rome to Persia. The measured harmony of Greek temple design influenced sacred architecture for millennia to come. In cities throughout the Mediterranean, public spaces were arranged following Greek models, with colonnaded streets and agoras serving as gathering places for communities. The Greek approach to urban planning and civic organization left an enduring mark. Cities founded during Alexander's campaigns and the subsequent Hellenistic period maintained their Greek character long after political ties to Greece had faded. The gymnasium, theater, and marketplace remained essential features of Mediterranean urban life, spaces where people could gather to exercise, enjoy performances, or conduct daily business. In the realm of art, Greek aesthetic principles transformed how people throughout the Mediterranean represented their world. The naturalistic portrayal of the human form, the careful attention to proportion and perspective, and the storytelling power of relief sculpture influenced artists for generations. Even as local styles merged with Greek techniques, the the Greek tradition of scientific inquiry and rational observation continued to flourish in centers of learning like Alexandria. Here, scholars built upon Greek mathematical principles, astronomical observations, and medical knowledge. The systematic approach to understanding the natural world, first developed by Greek thinkers, became a foundation for scientific advancement throughout the Mediterranean region. Greek political ideas about citizenship, law, and civic participation found fertile ground in many Mediterranean societies. While few places adopted the direct democracy of Athens, the concept of citizen participation in governance and the importance of public debate left lasting impressions on political development throughout the region. As we drift towards sleep, we can imagine these enduring influences of Greek civilization flowing like gentle currents through time, touching shore after shore around the Mediterranean. In the soft evening light of countless coastal cities, the shadows of Greek columns still fall across public squares. In the quiet of libraries and schools, ancient Greek words still whisper their wisdom. The legacy of this remarkable civilization continues to resonate, a testament to the profound impact of Greek culture on the Mediterranean world and beyond. This lasting influence serves as a reminder that great civilizations never truly fade away. They live on in the ideas, art, and institutions they inspire in others, creating ripples that continue to shape our world even today. As our journey through ancient Greece draws to a close, let us rest for a moment and reflect on the vast tapestry of human experience we have explored together. Like waves gently lapping at the shores of the Aegean, the stories of countless lives have washed over us, each contributing to the greater flow of history. From the misty depths of the Greek Dark Ages, We watched as small settlements grew into mighty city-states, each with its own character, like different flowers blooming in the same garden. We witnessed the slow emergence of new ideas about governance, citizenship, and human potential. The agoras filled with voices debating the nature of justice, while temples rose gleaming against azure skies. Think of how the Greek people moved through cycles of change, like the eternal dance of seasons. From isolation came connection, from conflict came cooperation, from simple beginnings came profound sophistication. The rise of the polis system showed us how communities can organize themselves in new ways, creating spaces where human creativity and ambition could flourish. Let your mind drift back to the morning of Marathon, where citizen soldiers stood together to defend their way of life. Remember the courage at Thermopylae, where sacrifice became legend. These moments, though distant in time, still speak to us about the strength that lives in human hearts, about the bonds that form between people who share a common cause. Consider the golden light of Athens in its prime, when art and philosophy and democracy flowered together. The words of Socrates still echo across millennia, asking us to examine our lives, to seek wisdom and understanding. The plays of Sophocles still move us with their insights into human nature. The Parthenon still stands, test like a great river flowing through time. We followed the course of events as power shifted between cities and states. We saw how Sparta's victory led to its own challenges, how Thebes rose and fell, how the very success of the Greek system carried within it seeds of transformation. The story of ancient Greece teaches us that change is the only constant, that every achievement contains both triumph and challenge. As your breathing deepens and your thoughts grow quieter, picture the world Alexander inherited and transformed. From Macedonia to India, his campaigns connected cultures and ideas in ways that would reshape human civilization. The Hellenistic age that followed showed us how different peoples and traditions could blend and influence each other, creating new forms of art, literature, and understanding. The legacy of ancient Greece flows through our modern world like underground streams, feeding the roots of our own civilization. Our concepts of democracy, our appreciation for rational inquiry, our belief in public debate and civic participation, all these have their origins in the experiences we have explored together. When we gather to vote, to discuss ideas, to watch theater or compete in athletics, we are connecting to traditions born in those distant centuries. As sleep draws nearer, let us appreciate how this history reminds us of our shared human journey. Though the people we've encountered wore different clothes and spoke different languages, they felt the same emotions we feel. They knew love and fear, ambition and uncertainty, triumph and loss. They gazed at the same stars and asked the same fundamental questions about existence that we still ponder. The philosophers of ancient Greece understood that wisdom often comes in cycles, like the turning of great wheels through time. Each generation learns anew the lessons of the past, adding their own understanding to humanity's collective knowledge. As you rest here now, you are part of that continuing story, that endless process of learning and growing and changing. Let your thoughts drift to the enduring gifts these ancient people left for us. The beauty they created still inspires, their questions still challenge us, their achievements still amaze us. Through wars and peace, through prosperity and hardship, they built something that transcended their own time, something that continues to enrich human life. As your body settles more deeply into rest, consider how the story of ancient Greece is, in many ways, the story of human potential. It shows us how people can overcome divisions to work together, how creativity can flourish when given space to grow, how wisdom can develop through open discussion and debate. These lessons remain as relevant today as they were 2.5 millennia ago. The great libraries of Alexandria may have been lost, but the ideas they contained have echoed through centuries. The Olympic Games of antiquity may have ended, but their spirit lives on when nations gather in peaceful competition. The ancient oracles may have fallen silent, but humans still seek to understand their destiny and place in the cosmos. Feel yourself becoming part of this vast historical flow, like a leaf carried gently on ancient waters. The same Mediterranean winds that filled Greek sails still blow today. The same moon that lit the Acropolis still shines down on our world. Time flows ever onward, yet somehow the past remains present with us, teaching and guiding. As sleep approaches, let the wisdom of ancient Greece settle over you like a comfortable blanket. Remember that you are part of a human story that stretches back through countless generations and forward into unknown futures. Let your mind float freely through the ages we've explored, finding peace in the perspective that history provides. The night deepens, and like the ancient Greeks, we can look up at the eternal stars and feel our connection to all who have come before. Their struggles and triumphs, their discoveries and creations, their hopes and dreams, all are part of the inheritance they left for future generations. As you drift towards sleep, know that you too are part of this continuing story, this endless human journey of growth and discovery. May the timeless wisdom of ancient Greece guide you toward peaceful dreams, where past and present merge like gentle waters flowing together. Rest now, knowing that the great cycle continues, that each dawn brings new opportunities for understanding, and that the legacy of those ancient days lives on in the quiet chambers of human hearts. Sleep well, carried by the eternal river of time, held in the embrace of history's endless flow.